Caleb Walker ripped a billionaire's hand off a woman's throat and slammed him into marble hard enough to crack the room silent. 200 witnesses, every phone up. His career dead in 3 seconds. Then Victoria Hale, the coldest CEO in America, pointed at him and said, "Get him out." 12 hours later, that same man sat at her boardroom table and joked, "Hell, I'd marry you myself." 11 men laughed. She didn't. She said, "I accept." But her reason wasn't the money, wasn't the contract, wasn't her father's will. It was one sentence she'd never said out loud to anyone, and when she finally said it, Caleb wished he'd never asked. Comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels tonight. Subscribe and stay to the end. Caleb Walker had been standing in the same 6-foot square of hallway for 4 hours and 11 minutes, and his knee had opinions about it. The knee was a souvenir. Bering Sea. 2016. A fishing trawler folding in half like a beer can while he went down the wire for the 4th time that night. He'd gotten all 5 men off that boat. The knee had been the invoice. Now the knee kept time in a hotel corridor in downtown Boston, while men in $10,000 suits carried champagne past him like he was a coat rack. His earpiece crackled. "Walker, position. Corridor B, still here, still nothing. Copy, stay awake. Wasn't planning on napping Rick." A pause. Then quieter, because Rick Vance had known Caleb since the Navy and was the only reason Caleb had this job at all. "2 more hours, brother, then you're done." 2 more hours, Caleb agreed. 2 more hours was $340. $340 was the electric bill and most of the water bill, and if he picked up the Saturday shift at the warehouse, it was Lily's field trip to the aquarium, the one she'd asked about exactly 1 time, and then never mentioned again, which was worse than asking 100 times, because it meant she'd already done the math herself. 7 years old, and she already did the math. That was the part that ate him, not the exhaustion, the math. He shifted his weight off the bad knee and checked his watch. 9:47 p.m. At 9:47 p.m., Lily Walker was supposed to be asleep. She would not be asleep. Mrs. Delgado from 4B would have read her 2 chapters and turned off the light, and Lily would have waited exactly 90 seconds and then turned it back on and read ahead, which she thought was a secret and which everyone knew. Caleb allowed himself a small, tired smile in an empty hallway. Then the doors at the end of the corridor banged open and the night stopped being ordinary. 3 men came out fast, not running worse than running, walking the way men walk when they've just won something and want to be seen walking away from it. The first one was tall and silver-haired and carrying his jacket over his arm, like a man leaving a poker table he'd cleaned out. The other 2 orbited him. "She'll fold," the silver-haired one was saying. "She always folds eventually. She just needs to hear the number out loud." She didn't look like she was folding Adrian. They never do. That is the fun part. They passed within 3 feet of Caleb. None of them looked at him. That was standard. Caleb had learned in 8 months of security work that a man in a black jacket with an earpiece becomes furniture, but there was something in the way this one didn't look at him that landed different. Not indifference. Category. Like Caleb had been sorted into a drawer and the drawer had been closed. Adrian. Caleb filed the name. The doors hadn't finished swinging shut when he heard the voice from inside. A woman's voice. Low. Controlled. So controlled that the control was the loudest thing about it. "Say it again." Another voicemail, older. "Victoria." "No. Say it again, Gerald. You said it once in front of 11 people. Say it in front of me." "There's no need to be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being accurate. You said, and I'm quoting, the board's confidence in your judgment would be materially strengthened by a demonstration of personal stability." Personal stability. That's what we're calling it now. Victoria. "Say the word Gerald. Use the actual word." A long silence. "Marriage," the old man said. "The board would like to see you married." Caleb, 30 feet away, did not move. He was not supposed to be hearing this, Every instinct he'd built in 12 years of service told him to step away from the door. Go find a different square of hallway and let rich people be rich at each other in private. He didn't move, because he'd heard that flatness in a voice before. He'd heard it in the back of a helicopter at 3 in the morning from a 19-year-old kid who'd just watched his best friend go into the water and not come back up. That specific, terrible calm. The calm of somebody holding themselves together with both hands and hoping nobody notices the effort. 9 months, the old man was saying. Your father's instrument is very clear. Unmarried on your 33rd birthday and control of Horizon Global transfers to the trust. The trust's principal beneficiary is Adrian Cross. Yes, Gerald, I've read it. I've read it more times than you've read anything in your life. Then you understand. I understand that my father wrote a will that treats me like a horse. That's not fair. It's breeding stock, Gerald. He wrote it in 2009, and he never changed it. And now 11 men in a room are going to vote on whether I'm allowed to keep the company I built because I haven't produced a husband. Do you know what I did last quarter? I took us into 4 new markets. I saved 1,100 jobs in Ohio. 1,100. I flew out there myself and stood in the parking lot at 6 in the morning and told them nobody was losing their house. And you want to talk about personal stability. Nobody is questioning your competence. Everybody in that room just questioned my competence. They're questioning your exposure. There's a difference. Is there? Caleb heard a chair move, then footsteps sharp fast, then stopping. Adrian's already talking to Hartley, the old man said, softer now. And to Reyes. He's been talking to them for a year. He's not going to wait for your birthday. He's going to force a vote before it, and the will gives him the argument. You need something to put in front of them, Victoria, something they can see. So I should get married. I'm saying you should consider, to who? Gerald. Who should I marry? Should I marry Kessler? He asked. You know, last April, over dinner. He got out his phone and showed me a spreadsheet. An actual spreadsheet. Projected synergies. He'd modeled our wedding as a merger. He'd assigned it a confidence interval. Kessler's a fool. Kessler's the normal one. Her voice cracked, one hairline fracture gone as fast as it came. That's what I need you to understand. Kessler's the honest one. He at least admitted he was buying something. Silence. Then very quietly, I'm sorry. Don't. A breath. Don't do that. I don't need you to be sorry. I need you to count votes. I've counted them. And another silence, the kind with a number in it. That's what I thought, Victoria Hale said. The door opened. Caleb had approximately 1 second to arrange his face into professional blankness, and he mostly succeeded, and it mostly didn't matter because the woman who came through the door wasn't looking at faces. He'd seen her picture. Everyone had seen her picture. Forbes had put her on a cover 18 months ago under the word ruthless, and the photographer had lit her like a knife. The woman in the hallway didn't look like a knife. She looked like somebody who had been holding a knife for so long that her hand had forgotten how to open. She stopped. She'd registered him. How much did you hear? She said. Caleb had prepared in that 1 second a lie. It was a good lie. It was the lie every professional in his position would have told. Nothing, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am. Just doing my rounds, ma'am. He heard himself say, all of it. Behind her, the old man made a sound. Victoria Hale's eyebrows went up, perhaps 2 millimeters. In her, Caleb would learn later, that was equivalent to another person falling out of a chair. All of it, she repeated. Yes, ma'am. You're aware you could be fired for that. I'm aware I could be fired for a lot of things. That's kind of the deal. Then why not lie? Caleb considered it honestly, which took about as long as it took to breathe once. Because you've had a real bad night, he said, and I figure you've had about enough people in it telling you what you want to hear. The hallway got very quiet. The old man Gerald stepped forward with the practiced smoothness of a man who had spent 40 years smoothing things. Ms. Hale, I'll have the vendor's supervisor. Gerald. Address this immediately. Gerald. He stopped. Victoria Hale looked at Caleb for what felt like a very long time. She looked at him the way he'd once watched a bomb tech look at a wire total attention zero emotion, everything riding on it. What's your name? She said. Walker, Caleb Walker. Who do you work for, Caleb Walker? Meridian Protective. Contract outfit. We're the guys they hire, so the guys they actually hire don't have to stand in hallways. Something moved at the corner of her mouth. It wasn't a smile. It was the ghost of the possibility of one. How long have you been standing in this hallway? 4 hours, 19 minutes. You know the exact number? Yes, ma'am. Why? Because it's $340, Caleb said. And I've got a kid who wants to see a shark. He didn't know why he said it. He'd never said anything like that to a client in 8 months. It broke every rule Rick had drilled into him. You are Wallpaper. Walker. Wallpaper doesn't have a family. Wallpaper doesn't have a bad knee. Wallpaper doesn't have opinions. And he said it anyway. Standing in a hallway at 9:53 at night to a woman worth $4 billion. Victoria Hale didn't laugh at him. She didn't soften either. She just recalibrated. He watched it happen. Watched something behind her eyes take the information and move it somewhere important. A shark, she said. The aquarium. Her class is going in April. It's $42 with the bus. And you don't have $42. I've got $42, Caleb said. I just don't have $42 and the electric bill. That's a different math problem. Gerald cleared his throat like a man dying of politeness. Victoria ignored him. She was still looking at Caleb. Thank you for not lying to me, she said. Then she walked away down the corridor, and her heels made a sound like a countdown, and Caleb Walker went back to standing in his 6-foot square and told himself that was the strangest thing that would happen to him that year. He was off by about 90 minutes. At 11:12 p.m., Caleb got moved. Ballroom north side, Rick said in his ear. Client request. Which client? The client Walker. The client. What did you do? Nothing. Walker. I told the truth to a billionaire. Oh, for... Rick's sigh could have inflated a life raft. Just go stand there and be pretty. So Caleb went and stood there. The ballroom was the kind of room where the ceiling costs more than a house. 200 people in it, and Caleb could have described the professional threat profile of every single one of them in about 9 seconds. Nobody in that room could have thrown a punch that landed, and he did it anyway, because that was what his hands and eyes did when the rest of him was tired. He found Victoria Hale in 11 seconds. She was on the far side, surrounded holding a glass of something she wasn't drinking, listening to a man talk with an expression of perfect attention that Caleb recognized instantly because he'd worn it himself at about 400 military funerals. And then he found Adrian Cross. Cross was working the room like weather. He moved, and people arranged themselves around him. He touched shoulders. He laughed with his head back. He was, Caleb thought, extremely good at this in the specific way of a man who has decided that other people are terrain. At 11:31, Cross crossed the room toward Victoria. At 11:32, Caleb started moving before he had permission from himself. He couldn't have told you why. Later, much later, when Lily asked him and he had to actually answer, he'd say it was the thing he'd learned in 12 years of putting his body between water and people. You don't get a warning. You get a feeling in the back of your neck about a second and a half before it matters, and the guys who are still alive are the guys who trusted the second and a half. Victoria, Cross's voice carried. He wanted it to. You left early. I left on time. Gerald's upset. Gerald's 71. Gerald's upset about the font on the agenda. Cross laughed genuinely warmly, and Caleb watched 40 people turn toward that laugh and decide the conversation was friendly. You know, Cross said, I want to say something, and I want you to hear it the way I mean it. That sounds like a threat with good manners. It's a kindness. He stepped closer. You've been carrying this thing since you were 26 years old. Your father died and dropped a building on you, and everybody applauded, and nobody asked if you wanted it. And you've been magnificent. Genuinely. I've told people that. Adrian. But there's no version of the next 9 months where you don't lose. You know that, right? You're too smart not to know that. So all I'm asking, and I'm asking Victoria, I'm not taking, is that you let it be graceful. He smiled. Let it be your idea. Let me buy you out at a number that makes you look like a genius, and you go do whatever it is you'd do if you were allowed to want things. Caleb was 15 feet away now. He'd stopped because there was still nothing happening. 2 people were talking. That was all. And what would I do? Victoria said. I have no idea, said Adrian Cross. Nobody does. That's the saddest thing about you. And then he put his hand on her. It wasn't violent. That was the thing Caleb would try to explain later in the room, where they asked him what happened. It wasn't violent at all. Adrian Cross put his hand on the side of Victoria Hale's neck thumb, at the hinge of her jaw, the way you'd touch a horse you were considering familiar, proprietary, gentle. And he tilted her head very slightly toward him and said something too quiet to carry. And Victoria Hale didn't move. That was what did it. Caleb had seen a lot of frozen people. In the water mostly. There's a moment when a person in a survival situation stops fighting and just goes still. It looks like calm. It is the exact opposite of calm. It's the body making a decision the brain hasn't been told about yet. Victoria Hale went still in a ballroom, in a $4,000 dress in front of 200 people, who all decided at once to look at something else. Caleb crossed the 15 feet in about 2 seconds. He didn't say, "Excuse me." He got his left forearm under Cross's wrist and took the hand off her neck, clean, no drama. A movement he'd done 1,000 times in 1,000 pools. And when Cross's weight came forward with the surprise of it, Caleb's right hand was already flat on his sternum, and he walked him backward 4 steps and put him against the marble pillar, hard enough that the sound of it went across the whole room like a dropped plate. Everything stopped. 200 people. Absolute silence. Adrian Cross stared at him with an expression of pure, undiluted astonishment. Not fear. Caleb noted astonishment, the look of a man watching a chair stand up and speak. "Get your hands off me," Cross said. "They are off you," Caleb said. "Notice how much better this is. Do you have any idea?" "Yeah." Caleb stepped back and put his hands at his sides, open, visible textbook. "You're Adrian Cross. You're worth about $2 billion. You're going to have my job by midnight and my license by Friday, and you're going to tell this story at dinner for a year." He looked at him. Was it worth it? Was what worth it? The touch, Caleb said. Was it worth it because she was scared? And you knew she was scared, and you did it anyway in front of 200 people, and every one of them looked at the floor. He shook his head slowly. "Sir, I have pulled some genuinely evil men out of the water. I have. And I never met one who needed people to watch." Somebody in the crowd made a sound. It might have been a laugh. It got strangled immediately. Adrian Cross's face went through 3 things very fast, and the third one was the one Caleb would remember. It went pleasant. "What's your name, son?" "Caleb Walker." "Caleb Walker." Cross straightened his jacket with 2 fingers. "You have no idea what you just did." "I've got a rough idea." "No." Cross smiled. "You really don't." And then Rick's voice was in Caleb's ear yelling, "Walker, what the hell?" And there were hands on his arms, and 2 guys from the hotel's own team were walking him toward the service doors, and the 200 people had started talking again, all at once, the way a room does after a crash. Caleb looked back once. Victoria Hale was standing exactly where she'd been. She had one hand at her throat at the place where the thumb had been. She was looking at him, and she said not loudly, but the room had gone strange and thin, and it carried, "Get him out." Caleb's stomach dropped. There it is. Then, "And bring that one to me." She was pointing at Adrian Cross. Yeed. They put Caleb in a service corridor next to a stack of folded banquet chairs, and Rick Vance arrived 4 minutes later with the specific walk of a man who has been fired by phone on his way there. Tell me it's not what they said. Depends what they said. They said you assaulted Adrian Cross. I moved his hand. They said you put him through a wall walker. It's a pillar. It's structural. It was never going anywhere. Caleb stopped. He sat down on the stack of chairs and put his elbows on his knees, and for the first time all night let himself feel the knee and the 4 hours and 40 minutes and the whole enormous shape of what he'd just done. He had his hand on her neck, he said. Rick stared at him. Her neck, Rick, and she went still. You know what still means. You've seen still. Rick sat down next to him. Neither of them said anything for a while. How bad? Caleb finally asked. Meridian's done. Contract's gone. Not just you, the whole account. 40 guys. Rick rubbed his face. And Cross's lawyer already called somebody. There's going to be a report. Assault? Probably. How much would Walker? How much do I need for a lawyer, Rick? Give me a number. I do better with numbers. Rick didn't give him one. That was the answer. Caleb nodded slowly. He looked at his hands. 2 hours ago, these hands had been worth $340 a night, and now they were worth a court date. She's 7, he said. It came out flat. I've got $111 in savings, and a kid who's 7, and I just... He stopped. Started again. Rick, tell me I did the wrong thing. Say it out loud so I can hear it and be done with it. Rick Vance was quiet for a long moment. I've known you since Norfolk, he said. In 22 years, I have watched you do exactly one stupid thing, and that was going in the water a 4th time off Kodiak, and you got Danny Reyes's brother out of a wheelhouse, and you wrecked your knee doing it, and I have never once heard you mention it. He stood up. So no, I'm not going to say it. Go home, Caleb. Kiss your kid. We'll figure it out Monday. Caleb got as far as the parking garage. His truck was a 2004 F-150 with a passenger door that only opened from the inside and a Kelley Blue Book value of $1,100. There was a woman standing next to it. She was in her 50s gray suit, tablet in hand, and the look on her face was the look of somebody who had been standing in a cold parking garage for 20 minutes and had priced that inconvenience out at an hourly rate. Mr. Walker. Caleb slowed. That's me. My name is Dorothy Vance, no relation. I'm Ms. Hale's chief of staff. She checked her tablet. You're taller than the description. Ma'am, if this is about the lawsuit, it isn't. Because I'm going to be honest with you, it's midnight and I'm out of a job and I'd rather get sued on a full night's sleep. Mr. Walker. Dorothy looked up from the tablet. Ms. Hale would like to see you tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, Horizon Global 51st floor. Caleb stood there. To fire me because I'm already fired. That's a completed action. You can cross that off. I don't believe termination is on the agenda. Then what's on the agenda? Dorothy Vance looked at him with an expression he couldn't read at all. Mr. Walker, I have worked for that woman for 6 years, she said. Tonight she came off that floor and said 4 words to me. Do you want to know what they were? Yeah, I do. She said, find out about him. Dorothy handed him a card. So I did. 12 years. Rescue swimmer. 406 saves of record. Silver life-saving medal. Medical discharge in 2018. Married 11 years to Sarah Ellen Walker, née Marsh, died of glioblastoma in June of 2022. 1 daughter. She lowered the tablet. And $111 in savings. Caleb's jaw tightened. That's a real invasive list. Yes, Dorothy agreed. It is. 9 o'clock, Mr. Walker. She walked away. Caleb got in the truck and sat there with the card in his hand for a long time before he could make himself turn the key. Mrs. Delgado was asleep in the recliner with the TV going. Caleb paid her the $20 he had apologized for the hour, walked her across the hall, and came back. Lily's light was on. Of course it was. He stood in the doorway. She had the book propped on her knees and her flashlight in her teeth, even though the lamp was on because the flashlight was part of the ritual, and when she saw him, she went absolutely rigid with the guilt of the professionally guilty. "I was just reading ahead," Caleb said. "I know." "I wasn't." "Lil." "I was reading ahead," Lily admitted. He sat down on the edge of the bed. The mattress complained. Everything in the apartment complained. "Which one?" She showed him. It was the shark book, the library one. He'd renewed it 4 times. "Dad?" "Yeah." "Did you know that a great white can't stop swimming or it dies?" "I did know that." "It has to swim its whole entire life, even asleep." "Sounds exhausting." "I think it's cool," Lily said with the total moral certainty of 7. Then differently. "Your face is doing the thing." "What thing?" "The thing where you're smiling but your eyes are having a bad day." Caleb laughed. It came out wrong halfway to something else, and he sat there in his daughter's bedroom in a jacket that didn't belong to him anymore, and thought with perfect clarity, "I don't have a job. I have $111. And this kid has one parent left in the whole world." "Rough night at work," he said. "Did you catch anybody?" "It's not that kind of job bug." "Dad?" Lily put the book down. That was serious. She never put the book down. "Are we okay?" And there it was. The math. 7 years old. Caleb looked at his daughter who had her mother's chin and her mother's absolutely merciless honesty, and he made a decision he would think about for the rest of his life. He didn't lie. "I don't know yet," he said, "but I'm going to know by tomorrow. And whatever the answer is, you and me are the answer together. Deal." Lily considered this with enormous gravity. "Deal," she said. Then, "Can I still read one more chapter?" "Absolutely not." "Okay." A beat. "Are you going to leave the door open?" "Always do." He was in the hallway when she said very small, "Dad, something's different, huh?" Caleb stopped. "Yeah, Bug," he said. "Something's different." The 51st floor of Horizon Global had a view of the entire harbor and a silence so expensive Caleb could feel it in his fillings. He'd worn the funeral suit. It was the only suit. It still smelled faintly like the church. Dorothy took him past the glass and put him in a conference room, and he sat in a chair that cost more than his truck and looked at 11 empty seats. Then the door opened, and it wasn't 11 empty seats anymore. They came in a group men, mostly 60 and up, the kind of men Caleb had spent his whole life standing outside of doors for. Gerald was among them, and Gerald's face did an interesting thing when he recognized the security guard from the hallway now sitting at the table. And then Victoria Hale walked in, and everyone stopped talking. She looked at Caleb. She had a folder in her hand. "Gentlemen," she said, "this is Caleb Walker. He put Adrian Cross into a pillar last night." Nobody breathed. "Ms. Hale?" Gerald said carefully. "Why is he in this room?" "Because you spent 90 minutes yesterday telling me the board requires a demonstration of personal stability." Victoria set the folder down. "So, I'm demonstrating." And then Caleb Walker, who had not slept, who had $11 less than $111, who was sitting in a room full of billionaires in a suit that smelled like his wife's funeral. Caleb Walker heard the whole thing go sideways, because Gerald said, "Victoria, this is absurd, you cannot seriously," and a man at the end said, "It's the optics for God's sake." And another said, "Cross will destroy her with this." And they went all of them all at once talking over her, talking about her in her own building at her own table, like she was a line item. And Victoria Hale sat there and took it. Chin up. Face perfect. Absolutely still. Still, Caleb thought. There's that word again. He didn't plan what he said next. That was the truth of it, and he'd tell that truth in every room under oath for the rest of his life. "Hey," he said. Nobody heard him. "Hey." The room stopped. 11 men looked at him. "I'm sorry," Caleb said. "I'm nobody. Genuinely. I'm the guy from the hallway. But I've been sitting here 9 minutes, and not one of you has said her name to her face." He looked around the table. You keep saying the board requires. You know what that sounds like from where I'm sitting? Sounds like a room full of guys who need a woman to be a wife before they'll let her be the boss. He shrugged, tired past caring. Maybe she doesn't need a husband. Maybe she just needs somebody in the room who actually trusts her. Somebody snorted. And Caleb, exhausted, unemployed, out of road, and genuinely trying to break the tension the way he'd broken it in 100 cold helicopters at 3 in the morning, smiled and said the 11 words that ended his old life for real. Hell, I'd marry you myself if it had shut these guys up. The room laughed. It laughed hard, the ugly, relieved, ha-ha, look-at-the-help laugh of men who have just been handed permission to dismiss something. Gerald laughed. The man at the end of the table wiped his eye. Caleb laughed too. It was a joke. It was a ridiculous joke. Victoria Hale did not laugh. She looked at him straight down the length of that table past 11 laughing men, and she said in a voice like a closing door, "Okay." The laughing stopped. "I'm sorry," Caleb said. "I accept," said Victoria Hale. Silence. Total structural silence. "Ms. Hale," Gerald began, "you wanted a demonstration." She hadn't taken her eyes off Caleb. "Here it is." "You cannot possibly." Mr. Walker, still not looking away. "Stand up." Caleb, on some ancient reflex that had nothing to do with thinking, stood up. "Everyone out," Victoria said. "Now." They went. It took 90 seconds, and it was the loudest 90 seconds of Caleb's life, and when the door finally shut, there were 2 people in a room built for 30. Caleb sat back down very slowly. "Ma'am." "Victoria." "Ma'am." He put both hands flat on the table. "That was a joke." "I know. I need you to hear that. That was a joke. I'm a security guard. I'm an unemployed security guard. As of about 11 hours ago, because of you, no offense. Some taken." She sat down across from him. "Sit still for 4 minutes and let me talk, and then you can walk out of here, and I'll never contact you again. 4 minutes. Can you do that?" Caleb looked at her. "Yeah," he said. "I can do 4 minutes." She slid the folder across the table. 1 year, Victoria said. "That's the whole thing. 12 months legally married publicly on paper. At the end of it we file and it's over and you never see me again. You'd need to live in the residence, the board will send people. They'll check, they always check. You'd keep your own life. There's no romantic component. None. This is a contract. And in exchange I keep my company." She said it evenly. "And you get $800,000, your daughter's education funded through graduate school, full medical for both of you, and a lawyer on retainer who will make the Adrian Cross problem go away by Thursday." Caleb didn't touch the folder. $800,000, he said. "Yes." "To be married to you." "On paper? Yes." "For a year?" "Yes." Caleb sat there. In his head, unbidden, obscene, the numbers ran themselves the way they always did. 800,000 was the electric bill, and the water bill, and the aquarium, and the college. 800,000 was Lily. Never doing the math again. Ever. Not once, for the rest of her life. He shoved it away so hard his hands shook. "No," he said. Victoria blinked. It was the first genuinely unguarded thing he'd seen her do. "No." He stood up. "Ma'am, I've got a 7-year-old, and she lost her mom when she was 3, and she doesn't remember her, which is the single worst thing that has ever happened to me, worse than the thing itself, because it means I'm the only place her mother still exists." His voice was rising, and he let it. "So I get to decide what she learns about love. Me. That's my one job. And I am not going to teach that kid that 2 people can sign a piece of paper and call it a family. I'm not. Not for 800,000. Not for 8 million. He was breathing hard. Victoria Hale looked up at him from her chair, and her face had gone strange. "Sit down," she said quietly. "I'm done." "Caleb." She used his name. It stopped him cold. You asked in the hallway last night why I picked you out. You didn't ask, actually. I'll answer anyway. She folded her hands. Every man who has ever proposed to me had a number in his head before he opened his mouth. Every single one. Kessler had a spreadsheet. My father wrote me into a will like a clause. And last night in a room with 200 people, Adrian Cross put his hand on my throat and not one of them moved. She stopped. Swallowed. You moved, she said. You had $111 and a kid who wants to see a shark, and you had everything to lose, and you crossed 15 feet of floor for a stranger who has never done one single thing for you in her life. Caleb didn't say anything. That's the reason. Her voice didn't shake. Her hands did slightly, and she put them under the table. It's not that you're honest. Honest men are cheap. It's that you're honest when it costs you. Do you understand how rare that is? I have $4 billion, Mr. Walker. I own 11 buildings. I cannot buy one person who would have crossed that floor. The room was very quiet. So, no, Victoria said. I don't want a husband. I've never wanted a husband. I want to know that for 1 year there's one human being on this earth who is standing next to me for a reason other than what I'm worth. She looked up at him. And you're the only one I've ever met. Caleb stood there with his hand on the back of a chair that cost more than his truck. And then, from somewhere very far away, he heard himself ask the question that would change absolutely everything. Do I have to answer today? Victoria Hale looked at him for a long moment. No, she said. Take the weekend. He took the folder. He didn't decide to. His hand did it. And as he walked out past 51 floors of glass with an unsigned contract under his arm, and no job, and $111, Caleb Walker had exactly one clear thought, and it terrified him more than any water he'd ever gone into. I already know what I'm going to say. He made it exactly 4 blocks before he pulled the truck over. He didn't remember deciding to. 1 second he was driving, and the next second he was sitting at a curb outside a laundromat with his hazards on and the folder on the passenger seat, and his hands were shaking so hard he had to put them between his knees. $800,000. He said it out loud in the truck alone just to hear how stupid it sounded. $800,000. It didn't sound stupid. That was the problem. It sounded like an aquarium. It sounded like a dentist. It sounded like Lily's front tooth, the one that came in crooked, the one the school nurse had mentioned twice in a tone that meant somebody should look at that. And Caleb had said absolutely both times, and then gone home and looked at the number for braces, and closed the laptop very quietly. He pulled the folder into his lap and didn't open it. His phone buzzed. Rick Cross filed. Assault. Misdemeanor. Arraignment in 3 weeks. Rick Walker. Call me? He set the phone face down on the folder and put his forehead on the steering wheel. Mrs. Delgado picked Lily up from school on Fridays. It was one of about 9 load-bearing arrangements holding Caleb's life up, and every one of them was made of somebody's kindness, and he knew exactly how much that cost, because he'd been counting it for 4 years. He got home at 4. Lily was at the kitchen table with a worksheet and a granola bar. Hi, Dad. Hey, Bug. You're home. I'm home. She looked up. She had a way of looking up that was like being scanned. You're home on a Friday, Lily said. Yep. You're never home on a Friday. Well, I am today. Lily put her pencil down. Did you get fired? Caleb opened his mouth, closed it. Do the worksheet, he said. Dad? Lily. You said, she said, and her chin came up, and there was her mother right there in the kitchen 4 years dead and still winning arguments. You said last night whatever the answer is, we're the answer together. That was last night. That was literally last night. Caleb sat down across from her. Yeah, he said. I got fired. Lily absorbed this. She was very still about it, which he hated because he knew where she got the stillness. Is it because you did something bad? No. Is it because you did something good? Caleb laughed one surprised breath of it. How do you figure? Because you're not doing the mad face, Lily said. You do the mad face when you mess up. You're doing the tired face. You do the tired face when other people mess up, and you have to be nice about it. Jesus, Caleb said. You're 7. I'm 7.5. He rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands. There was a man, he said, and he was being unkind to a lady, and nobody in the room did anything about it. So I did something about it. What did you do? I moved him. With your hands. With my hands. Lily's eyes went enormous. Was he bad? And Caleb, who had made a career out of not lying to his daughter, thought about Adrian Cross's face going pleasant and said, "Yeah, I think he might be." "Then it's fine," Lily announced and picked her pencil back up. Case closed, world restored. Bug. It's not fine. We're gonna have to figure some things out. Okay, said Lily, writing. We'll figure them out together. Caleb sat there and looked at the top of his daughter's head and thought about a folder in a truck. Rick came over at 9 with a 6-pack. He knew Caleb wouldn't drink and drank 2 of them himself at the kitchen table while Lily slept 12 feet away. Say it again, Rick said. Rick, say the number again, Walker, because I've had 2 beers and I want to make sure I heard it. $800,000. 1 year, paper marriage. Rick put the bottle down. And you said no. I said no. You said no to $800,000. I did. Rick stared at him. Then he stood up, walked to the window, walked back and sat down again. Okay, he said. I need you to explain this to me like I'm dumb. Because from where I'm sitting, a woman offered you $800,000 to sign a piece of paper, and you have $111, no job, and an arraignment. So, explain. You know why. Say it anyway. Caleb turned his coffee cup a quarter turn. Because Lily's 7. And whatever she learns about what a marriage is, she learns it from watching me. That's it. That's the whole curriculum. There's no other teacher in this house. Uh-huh. So if she watches me sign a contract and call it a wedding... Walker. Rick leaned in. Can I tell you what I think? Because I've known you 22 years and I think you're lying. Excuse me, not about Lily. You're right about Lily, but that's not the reason you said no. Rick pointed the bottle at him. You said no because you're scared. Of what? Of taking something. Rick shrugged. You've never taken anything in your life. Not one thing. In Norfolk, you gave away your rack to a kid with a bad back. You went in the water 4 times off Kodiak because going in 3 times was somebody else's number. You've spent your whole life being the guy who gives, because if you're the guy who gives, then nobody ever gets to look at you and go, what's he in it for? Rick sat back. And now a woman offers you something, and you can't take it, because taking it would mean you're a guy who takes, and you'd rather be broke. Caleb didn't say anything. How much was Sarah's last month? Rick asked quietly. Caleb's head came up. Don't. How much, Cal? Rick. Because I know it was $91,000 because I saw the paper, because you left it on this table for 6 months like it was a tumor and you paid it. Every dime. 4 years of doubles. You paid the hospital that let your wife die. Rick's voice cracked just once, and he covered it with beer. And you never took $1 from anybody. Not from me. Not from the VA fund. Not from Sarah's mother who begged you. That's different. It's the exact same, Rick said. You just don't want anybody's fingerprints on your life. The refrigerator hummed. Down the hall, a light was on that shouldn't have been. She's not offering charity, Rick said. That's what I'm trying to get through your thick head. She's not giving you money because she feels sorry for you. She's buying something. She wants something and she can't get it and you've got it. That's not charity, brother. That's a job. He stood up. And you need a job. He put the empty bottles in the sink, which was the closest Rick Vance had ever come to an apology. At the door, he stopped. For what it's worth, he said, you told me she went still. In the ballroom. She did. You've seen still a lot of times, Rick said. You ever once walked away from it? He let himself out. Caleb read the contract at 1 a.m. at the kitchen table. It was 41 pages, and he read every word twice. Section 4 was the residence. Section 6 was the public appearances, a schedule actual dates quarterly. Section 9 was a confidentiality clause with a number attached to it that made his eyes water. Section 11 said there would be no physical or romantic relationship of any kind, and either party could terminate the agreement upon a violation. Section 14 was the money. Section 17 was about Lily. He read Section 17 4 times. The minor child shall not be represented in any public materials photographed, named, or referenced in any press capacity whatsoever. Any breach of this provision by the company, its agents, or party, A personally, shall constitute immediate material breach, at which point Party B may terminate this agreement and retain all compensation paid to date. Caleb sat back. She'd written that. Not a lawyer. A lawyer wouldn't have written personally. A lawyer wouldn't have put the penalty on her own side of the table. She'd written a clause that let him walk out with the money if she ever put his kid on a magazine cover. He looked at it for a long time. Then he got out his phone and looked at his savings account, because he was a man who liked to be accurate about things, and it said $111.42, and he thought, 42 cents. There's the aquarium. He laughed, out loud, alone, at 1 a.m. Then he put his face in his hands and didn't laugh. He called on Sunday. Dorothy Vance picked up on the second ring, which meant she'd been holding the phone. Mr. Walker? I have questions. Of course you do. 19 of them. 19. I wrote them down, Caleb said. Is that a problem? There was a pause, and then Caleb would swear to it later. Dorothy Vance made a small sound that was almost certainly a laugh. Mr. Walker, she said, in 6 years I have never once seen someone come to that woman with a list. Hold, please. They met in the residence, not the office. Caleb noticed that. He also noticed there was no assistant, no lawyer, and no glass of anything. Just Victoria Hale in a gray sweater, which was somehow more disorienting than the $4,000 dress, because it meant she was a person who owned sweaters sitting across a kitchen island that was longer than his apartment's living room. 19 questions, she said. 18. I answered one myself. Which one? Whether you wrote Section 17. Victoria's expression didn't change at all, which is how he knew. Go, she said. 1. When you say the board sends people to check, what does check mean? It means a woman named Marion Chu will come to dinner unannounced 4 to 6 times a year, and she will look at your shoes by the door and how many toothbrushes are in the cup, and whether there's food in the refrigerator that a man would eat. She will not ask you a single direct question. She's been doing it for 30 years, and she's very good. Toothbrushes. Toothbrushes. Okay. Caleb wrote something down. Victoria watched him write it down with visible bewilderment. 2. What happens to me on day 366? You file. It's uncontested. It takes about 90 days. That's not what I asked. What happens to me, publicly, when it ends? Victoria was quiet. They'll say you were paid, she said. They'll say you were a gold digger who got what he came for. They'll say it in print, and they'll say it forever. And when your daughter is 15 and she types your name into a search bar, that's what she'll find. Page 1. She held his eyes. I'm not going to lie to you about that, so don't waste a question asking me to. Caleb put the pen down. Okay, he said quietly. That's what I thought. Does that end it? No, that was 3. 4 do I have to lie? To who? To anybody. Under oath. To a reporter. To your board. To Marion Chu and her toothbrushes. He leaned forward. Because here's my thing. I'll do a lot. I'm not proud, and I'm past being proud, and I've got about $11 less than $111. But I've got one thing I actually own, and it's that when I open my mouth, what comes out is true. That's it. That's the only asset. So I need to know, does this contract require me to lie? Victoria Hale looked at him for a long, long moment. "No," she said. "You sure? Because a fake marriage seems like—" "It's not a fake marriage." She said it sharply enough that it surprised them both. She stopped. Started over. "It's a real marriage with a false premise. We would actually be married, Mr. Walker. Legally, completely. If somebody asks you if you're married to me, the true answer is yes. If somebody asks you if you love me, you can tell them it's none of their business, which is what married people say anyway." Her jaw tightened. "You won't have to lie. You'll have to decline to explain. There's a difference, and I need you to understand that I know the difference because I've spent my whole life in the gap between them." Caleb sat with that. "Okay," he said. 5. "There are 14 more of these." 13. 5. "My daughter." Victoria's face changed. It was small, a half-inch of something, but he caught it. "Section 17, she said. "Section 17 says you can't use her. It doesn't say what she is." Caleb's voice went low. "In this arrangement? In that house? What is she? I don't understand the question." "Yes, you do." Victoria stood up. She walked to the window and stood there with her back to him, and Caleb let her, because he'd learned in a lot of cold helicopters that sometimes you shut up and wait. "I don't know how to be around children," Victoria said. "That's not what I asked either. It's the honest answer to the question under your question." She turned around. "I don't know how. I wasn't, my father wasn't. There wasn't a mother. There was a woman named Inez who worked for us until I was 9, and then there wasn't. I have never in my life had a conversation with a 7-year-old. I don't know what they eat. I don't know what they're allowed to watch. I would very likely say something wrong to her within 4 minutes." "Okay. That's it." "Okay. Yeah," Caleb said. "That's the best answer you could have given me." "Why?" "Because every guy I have ever dated since Sarah died, and there's been 3. So let's not get carried away. Every single one of them met Lily and said, 'Oh my God, she's adorable,' and got down on one knee to talk to her like she's a golden retriever." He shook his head. "Kids know. They know in 9 seconds. Lily's been performing adorable for adults her whole life, because adults need it, and she's a nice kid. So a woman who tells me straight up, I don't know how that's the first honest thing anybody's said to me about my daughter in 4 years." Victoria stared at him. "You're a very strange man," she said. "I've been told." "What's 6? Caleb looked down at his list. Then he folded it in half and pushed it aside. "6 is the only one that matters," he said. "Why don't you just hire somebody model? Actor. Guy from a service. There are services, right? There's gotta be services. Pay him half of what you offered me. He signs whatever you put in front of him. He never says a true word in his life, and he's thrilled about it. That's easier. That's cleaner. Why me? I told you why. You told me a nice thing about crossing 15 feet of floor. That's a nice thing. That's not a reason." He stood up. "Ma'am, you don't build a $4 billion company on nice things. You're the most careful person I have ever met in my life. You didn't pick the guy who might make you feel something. So tell me the actual reason, or I walk out of here right now and you can go find your model." The kitchen was very quiet. Victoria Hale put both hands on the counter. "Because a model would sell me," she said. Caleb waited. "Not immediately, not for a year, but eventually in 3 years, in 6, somebody would put a number in front of him. Adrian would put a number in front of him. And he'd take it, and there'd be a book, or a podcast, or a very sad interview, and every single thing I said in my own home for 12 months would belong to somebody else forever." Her voice was completely flat. "I can survive losing the company. I've run the numbers on that. I cannot survive being known by somebody who's selling it. And I wouldn't sell you." "No." "How do you know?" "Because you had every reason to lie to me in a hallway at 10 o'clock at night, and you didn't," Victoria said. "And it cost you your job in 90 minutes and you still haven't asked me to fix it." Caleb opened his mouth, closed it. "Huh," he said. "Yes." I actually haven't. No, you haven't. You've asked me 18 questions about your daughter and your dignity and the shape of your obituary, and not one about your own life, which you incidentally set on fire on my behalf. She straightened. So that's the reason, Mr. Walker. It's not romantic. It's not nice. It's actuarial. You're the only asset I've ever found that doesn't depreciate when somebody offers it money. Caleb stood there in a kitchen the size of his childhood. Okay, he said. Okay what? Okay, I'll do it. Victoria Hale went very still. There's a condition, Caleb said. Of course there is. You tell Lily yourself. I'm sorry. I'm not lying to my kid, so I'm going to tell her the truth, the whole truth, age appropriate, but the truth. And you're going to be there when I do it, because if she's going to live in your house, she gets to look at you while you explain yourself same as I did. He picked up the pen. That's the condition. Take it or don't. Victoria stared at him with an expression he had genuinely never seen on a human face. You want me, she said, to explain a corporate governance crisis to a 7-year-old. 7.5. Mr. Walker. Caleb. That is the single worst idea anyone has ever brought into this room, and Adrian Cross has been in this room. Yeah, Caleb said. Wednesday work. Wednesday. Lily sat on the couch of an apartment that suddenly looked very small, with her hands in her lap, looking at the most powerful woman in Boston, who was sitting on the ottoman across from her, at a height she had clearly calculated in advance. Caleb stood by the wall and said nothing. That was the deal. He'd made himself promise. Lily, Victoria said. My name is Victoria Hale. I know, Lily said. You were on the TV in the dentist. Victoria blinked. Yes, probably. They said you were ruthless. Ruthless. Ruthless, Lily agreed. What's it mean? Caleb bit down on the inside of his cheek. It means, Victoria said slowly, that a person will do what needs doing even when it hurts somebody. Lily thought about that. Is that bad? Sometimes. Is it bad when you do it? Sometimes, Victoria said. Lily nodded satisfied, and Caleb thought she just passed a test she doesn't know she took. Okay, Lily said. Why are you in my house? Because I need your father's help, and I'm going to pay him for it, and it's going to change your life. And I think you should get to hear it from me. Okay. My father died and left me a company. It's a big one. 9,000 people work there. And when he wrote down the rules for it, he wrote a rule that said if I wasn't married by the time I was 33 years old, I'd have to give it away. Lily's forehead crunched. That's a dumb rule. Yes, said Victoria Hale. It is. Why'd he write it? And Caleb watched Victoria Hale, who negotiated with sovereign funds, who had once made a senator cry, take an actual hit in the chest from a second grader. I don't know, she said. Did you ask him? He died before I could. Oh. Lily's face did a thing. That's sad. It's inconvenient, Victoria said. That's not what I said, said Lily. Victoria stopped. No, she said after a moment. It isn't. So you're going to marry my dad? Yes. Do you love him? No, said Victoria. Caleb closed his eyes. Here we go. That's weird, Lily said. Yes. You're supposed to love the person. You are. So why are you doing it? Because it's a job, Victoria said. Do you know what a contract is? It's when you promise but with a paper. That's very close. Victoria leaned forward slightly. Your father is going to do a job for 1 year. The job is being married to me. When the year is done, the job is done, and we'll stop, and he'll have money to take care of you, and I'll have my company, and nobody gets hurt. That's the whole thing. It's not a love story. I'm not going to pretend it is because I think you'd catch me. Lily looked at her for a long, long moment. Then she said, "Are you going to be mean to him?" "No." "Are you going to be mean to me?" "I don't think so," Victoria said. "But I might be bad at you. I want to be honest about that. I don't know very much about children. I might get it wrong a lot." Lily considered this with the enormous gravity of the very young. "That's okay," she said. "Dad gets it wrong sometimes too. He puts the crusts on." "Noted," said Victoria Hale. "And you're not my mom." "No," Victoria said. "I'm not. I'm never going to be. Your mother was Sarah, and she's yours, and I'm not going to touch that." And Lily Walker, who had not cried about her mother in front of anyone in 3 years, who had built a small, perfect wall out of shark facts and reading ahead, burst into tears. Caleb came off the wall so fast he knocked a lamp. But Lily wasn't reaching for him. She was looking at Victoria, sobbing furious, 7 years old, and she said, "Nobody says her name." The apartment went silent. "Nobody says her name," Lily said, again wrecked. "They say your mom. They say she's in a better place. They say everybody does the voice and nobody ever just says it." Victoria Hale did not move to hug her. She did not make a sound. She sat on the ottoman with her hands on her knees, and she looked at that child like she was the only thing in the entire world. "Sarah," she said. Lily's breath hitched. "Sarah Ellen Walker," Victoria said. "Née Marsh. She died on June the 9th, 2022. She's your mother, and she's not going anywhere. And I'm not going to take her spot, and I'm not going to make you talk about her, and if you want to say her name in my house, you can say it as loud as you want." Lily stared at her. Then she got off the couch, walked over, put her forehead against Victoria Hale's shoulder, and stood there. Victoria's hands hovered in the air for 3 entire seconds, like she'd never been handed anything before in her life. Then she put one of them very carefully on the back of a child's head. Caleb had to leave the room. They got married 11 days later in a county office with a woman named Denise reading off a laminated card. There were 4 people there: Caleb, Victoria, Dorothy Vance, and Rick, who wore a tie, and Lily, who was 5 people, and who had insisted on a dress, and who stood the entire time with her hands clasped in front of her, like she was at a state funeral. "Do you, Caleb Walker, take Victoria Ann Hale?" "I do." "And do you, Victoria Ann Hale, take Caleb James Walker?" Victoria paused. It was half a second. Nobody caught it but Caleb, because Caleb had spent 12 years watching people right before they went into the water. "I do," she said. "By the authority vested in me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts," Denise said in the tone of a woman on her 4th ceremony before lunch. "I now pronounce you married. You may kiss." Absolute silence. "Where that's not," Caleb said. "It's optional," Denise said. "It's in the packet." "Great. Perfect. Love that." They shook hands. They actually shook hands in a county office in front of Denise, and Rick made a noise like a man being strangled, and Lily said loudly, "Why are you shaking hands?" And Dorothy Vance developed a sudden and severe interest in her phone. In the hallway afterward, Victoria said, "That was the worst 40 seconds of my adult life." "Yeah," Caleb said. "I've had better ones." "Was your first one better?" He looked at her. She'd asked it flatly the way she asked everything, but she was watching him. "Sarah made me dance," he said. "In a VFW hall, with 91 people and a rented speaker. There was a sheet cake." He put his hands in his pockets. "Yeah, it was better." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It wasn't a competition." He nodded at the door where Lily was chattering at Rick about the laminated card. And that kid just watched a woman say her mother's name out loud. So today's not nothing. Victoria didn't answer, but she didn't walk away either, and they stood there in a county courthouse hallway, 2 people who had just gotten married, not saying anything for a while. See, the residence had 11 rooms, and Lily counted every one of them at a dead sprint. There's a room with nothing in it. That's a guest room bug. There's nothing in it. That's the concept. She skidded back into the kitchen, hair everywhere. Victoria, Victoria, there's a room with nothing in it. Yes. Why? Victoria opened her mouth and discovered visibly that she had no answer. I don't know, she said. Can I put stuff in it? What kind of stuff? Stuff, Lily said with contempt. Yes, said Victoria Hale, worth $4 billion. Fine, put stuff in it. Lily was gone before the sentence ended. Caleb, unpacking a box of cereal into a cabinet that had never held cereal, said, You know she's gonna fill it. With what? Everything, all of it. That's a girl who has never once had a room with nothing in it. Victoria stood there. I've had this apartment for 6 years, she said. Yeah. It's the first noise it's ever made. Chatte. Marion Chu came in the third week at 6:40 on a Tuesday unannounced. Caleb was in the kitchen with a dish towel over his shoulder and a pot of something on the stove, and Lily was doing homework at the island and losing a war with fractions, and Victoria was still at the office. He knew who it was before she said a word. He'd been briefed extensively. Mrs. Chu, he said. Come in. It's spaghetti. I'm sorry. Marion Chu was 71 and 4'11", and she looked at his shoes by the door for a full second and a half. You cook, she said. I make spaghetti. That's not cooking, that's boiling something and apologizing. She sat. She did not ask a single question. She watched Lily fight fractions for 6 minutes. It's stupid, Lily said. It's not stupid, Caleb said. You're just mad. Both. Caleb agreed and tapped her paper. Look, forget the numbers. You got a pizza. You and me and Rick. How much do you get? A third. Now Rick leaves because Rick always leaves. Now how much? A half. So did your pizza get bigger? Lily's face did something complicated. No, there's just less people. There it is. That's the bottom number, is the people. The bottom number's always been the people bug. Lily stared at the worksheet like it had personally betrayed her and then attacked it. Marion Chu said, Where'd you learn that? Learn what? To not just tell her. Caleb shrugged. Water rescue. You can't explain to a drowning guy how to swim. You gotta give him something to hold. Marion Chu looked at him for a while. Victoria came in at 7:20 and stopped dead in the doorway. Marion. Victoria. You're early. I'm on time, Marion Chu said. You're late. And Caleb watched the most feared CEO in America put down her bag like a teenager caught coming in a window. Marion stayed for spaghetti. She said almost nothing. At the door at 9, she paused and looked at Victoria and said, You seem tired. I'm always tired. No, said Marion. You always look tired. Tonight you seem tired. She put on her coat. It's different. Then she was gone. Victoria stood in the entryway for a long moment. What did she mean by that? She said. I have no idea, Caleb lied, because sometimes you decline to explain. The thing about it was that it got easy. That was what Caleb could not get over and could not say out loud to anybody, and turned over at 2 a.m. like a stone in his pocket. It got easy. Victoria started coming home at 7, then 6:30. Nobody remarked on it. Dorothy Vance remarked on it to Caleb exactly once in an elevator in 4 words, She's never done that, and then never again. Lily filled the empty room in 9 days. Rocks mostly. A poster of a hammerhead. 41 library books. Victoria learned that Lily could not fall asleep without the hall light. Victoria learned that Lily's flashlight was a ritual and not a lighting solution. Victoria learned at considerable personal cost the entire discography of a boy band whose name Caleb refused to say out loud. She played it 4 times, Victoria said at 11 at night at the kitchen island with her head in her hands. Yeah. The same song. Yeah. 4 times Caleb. That's a light day. Is this a punishment? It's a childhood, Caleb said. They're basically identical. And Victoria Hale laughed. It was not a big laugh. It was about a second and a half of one, and it startled her more than it startled him. He watched her face do something complicated and half embarrassed, like a woman who'd found a coin in an old coat. Caleb went to bed and lay there and thought, that's the first time she's done that in 22 days, and I counted, and why did I count? The first crack came on a Thursday. Caleb was in the residence gym at 11 at night because his knee had opinions, and because he'd learned in the Navy that a man who can't sleep should at least sweat, and Victoria came in still in her work clothes and sat down on the bench across from him. They took the Ohio plant off the agenda, she said. What's that mean? It means 1,100 people I promised in a parking lot at 6 in the morning are back on a list. She said it perfectly evenly. Adrian moved 3 votes, Hartley, Reyes, and Ballard. He's been working Ballard for a year, and I never saw it. I never saw it, Caleb. That's the part. So what do you do? I don't know. Okay, Caleb said. What did you do the last time you didn't know? Victoria looked up. I've never not known, she said. And there it was. A woman with $4 billion sitting on a weight bench at 11 at night, with her hands open in her lap, and Caleb recognized it instantly because he'd seen it in the water 406 times. Hey, he said. You want the thing I say? What thing? When I'd go down the wire. Guy in the water, he's been in there 40 minutes. He's done. He's stopped kicking. You know what you never say? You never say you're gonna be fine. He knows he's not fine. You say one thing. Caleb leaned forward. You say I've got you. You don't have to do the rest of it. Victoria didn't say anything. That's it, Caleb said. That's the whole speech. It's not inspirational. It just means stop doing the part where you hold yourself up. Somebody else has got that part for a minute. The gym hummed. That's not in the contract, Victoria said. No, Caleb agreed. It's not. She sat there for a while. Then she stood up, and at the door, she stopped without turning around. Caleb? Yeah. 406, she said. Dorothy's file said 406 saves. That's right. How many did you lose? Caleb was quiet. 9, he said. Do you know their names? All 9. Victoria stood in the doorway with her back to him. That's what I thought, she said and left. It happened on a Sunday, and it was nothing. That was what he'd remember. It was nothing. It was 7:15 at night, and Lily was on the floor of the living room in a nest of library books, and Victoria was on the couch with a laptop she wasn't looking at, and Lily held up a page and said without looking up, absolutely casual, the most ordinary sentence in the English language, Mom, does a hammerhead have to swim too? The room stopped. Caleb in the doorway with 2 glasses of water did not move. Victoria Hale did not move. And Lily. Lily heard it about a second after she said it, and her whole body went rigid, and her face came up white and enormous with terror, and Caleb watched his daughter understand what she'd done and start immediately to cry. I didn't mean Lily. I know she's not. I know Dad. I know I didn't. And Victoria Hale set the laptop on the floor and got down on the carpet next to a 7-year-old and said in a voice Caleb had never heard her use, a voice that was shaking, yes. Lily stopped. What? Yes, Victoria said. A hammerhead has to swim too. They're obligate ram ventilators. They push water through their gills by moving so they can't ever stop. Not their whole lives. Her hands were trembling in her lap. I looked it up 3 weeks ago because you asked me about the great white, and I didn't know, and I didn't want to not know the next time. Lily stared at her. You looked it up? Yes. For me? Yes. And Lily Walker put her arms around Victoria Hale's neck and held on. Caleb stood in the doorway with 2 glasses of water in his hands. Over his daughter's shoulder, Victoria's eyes found his. She looked terrified, and she didn't let go. She didn't let go for 11 seconds. Caleb counted, because counting was what his hands did when the rest of him had nowhere to put itself. And at 11 seconds, Lily pulled back and wiped her face with the heel of her hand and said, Sorry. I'm okay. In the voice of a kid who had apologized for her own feelings so many times, it had become a reflex. "You don't have to be sorry," Victoria said. "I called you. I know what you called me. It just came out." "I know." Lily looked at the carpet. "Are you mad?" And Victoria Hale, still on the floor, in a $900 blouse, with a child's tears drying on her collar, said, "No, I'm not mad. I'm something. But it isn't mad." Later, when Lily was asleep, and the hall light was on, and the apartment had gone quiet the way it did around 11, Caleb found Victoria at the kitchen island with a glass of water she wasn't drinking. "You okay?" "No." "Okay." "That's it." "Okay. You want me to fix it?" Caleb sat down across from her. "I can't fix it. It's not a fixable thing. My kid called you Mom, and neither of us gets to decide how that felt." Victoria turned the glass a quarter turn. It was Caleb noticed exactly what he did with a coffee cup. "Section 11, she said. "That's not a Section 11 thing. There's no section for it." Her jaw was tight. "That's what I'm telling you. I've read that document 90 times, and there is no clause that covers a child getting attached to me. There's no penalty. There's no termination trigger. There's nothing." She looked up. "I wrote 41 pages to make sure nobody could get hurt, and I forgot the only person who could." Caleb didn't answer for a second. "Yeah," he said. "That's a failure." "That's a kid," Caleb said. "You can't contract around a kid. You could get every lawyer in Boston in here, and they couldn't write a clause that stops a 7-year-old from loving somebody. She's been doing it her whole life to people who didn't earn it. She did it to a bus driver once, guy named Manny. She cried for 2 days when he retired." "I'm not a bus driver." "No," Caleb agreed. "You looked up hammerheads." Victoria closed her eyes. 208 days, she said. "What?" "That's what's left. 208 days, and then it's 90 more for the filing, and then it's over." She opened her eyes. "I need you to know that I know that. Because you're sitting there being kind to me, and I want you to understand that I am fully aware of the arithmetic, and I have been aware of it every single day, and it has not helped." Caleb sat with that. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It hasn't helped me either." They looked at each other across a kitchen island at 11 at night. Neither of them said the next thing. The story broke on a Wednesday at 6:04 in the morning. Caleb knew before he read it because his phone did something phones don't normally do. It didn't buzz once it just started going, a sound like water coming in, and by the time he got his eyes open, there were 41 notifications, and Rick's name on the screen 11 times. The headline said billionaire CEO's secret marriage to her own security guard. Underneath it was a photograph of Caleb at the ballroom, mid-motion, hand flat on Adrian Cross's chest. Underneath that was the county marriage certificate. All of it, scanned, signatures and all. "They got the license," Caleb said out loud to nobody. His phone rang. Dorothy. "Do not go outside," she said. "How bad?" "There are 11 of them on the sidewalk. There will be 40 by 9. Do not go outside. Do not answer your door. And Mr. Walker." A pause, and for the first time in 4 months, Dorothy Vance sounded like a person. "Do not let that child near a window." Caleb was in the hall before she finished the sentence. Lily was already awake. Of course she was. She was standing in her doorway in shark pajamas with her flashlight in her hand. "Dad, there's yelling outside." "I know, Bug. They keep saying our name." "I know. Why are they saying our name?" And Caleb Walker knelt down in a hallway and had 4 full seconds to decide what kind of father he was going to be about this. "Because somebody told a secret," he said, "about Victoria and me being married. And now a lot of people who don't know us are going to say a lot of things about us, and some of them are going to be mean, and none of them are true, and none of them get to come in this house." Lily's chin was doing the thing. "Are they going to say things about me?" "No," Caleb said. "That one I can actually promise you. Victoria wrote a whole rule about it before she ever met you." Lily looked at him. "Before she met me." "Before she met you." Something happened in his daughter's face that Caleb didn't have a word for and would think about at 2 in the morning for the rest of his life. Victoria came home at 7:15 that night, and she was gray. Not tired, not angry. Gray. "Say it," Caleb said. Adrian gave them the contract. All 41 pages. To the board this afternoon, and to a reporter 40 minutes later. She set her bag down very precisely. "He's calling it fraud. He's saying I engineered a sham marriage to defeat a condition in a testamentary instrument, which is, Caleb, that's not nothing. That's an actual claim. That's a claim with case law behind it. Can he win? He doesn't have to win." Her voice was perfectly flat. "He has to hold a vote. Special session. 9 days. If 7 of 11 say the marriage was executed in bad faith, they can find me in breach of my fiduciary duty and recommend removal and the trust triggers, and it's done. He doesn't need a court, he needs a room." She looked at the wall. "And he's had that room for a year. How many votes has he got? 6. How many do you need? 5 to survive. I have 4. Caleb did the math out loud because he did better with numbers. "So it's Ballard." "It's Ballard." Victoria almost laughed. "It's Ballard, who I have known since I was 14 years old, who came to my father's funeral, who taught me how to read a term sheet in a hospital cafeteria." She finally looked at him. "He hasn't returned my calls in 6 days." Caleb went and got her a glass of water she wouldn't drink and put it in front of her anyway. "Okay," he said. "What's the play?" "There isn't one." "Victoria, there isn't one." She said it hard. "That's what I'm telling you. He's not wrong, Caleb. That's the entire problem. Everything he's saying is true. It was a contract. There was a payment schedule. I have never in my life been in a room where the other side was telling the truth, and I have no idea what to do with it. So don't fight the contract." "What?" "Don't fight the part he's right about." Caleb leaned on the counter. "Ma'am Victoria, I've been in about 900 rooms where I was the dumbest guy in it, so take this for what it's worth. But I've never once seen a guy come at somebody this hard, this fast, this public, over something he was gonna win anyway." Victoria's head came up. "What? You said it yourself. 9 months. He's got the will. He's got Ballard, you were done. He was gonna get the whole thing sitting in a chair." Caleb spread his hands. "So why's he burning a year of favors and torching his own reputation to make a marriage the story?" Victoria didn't move. "Say that again?" she said. "He's making it about the marriage. Why he doesn't need the marriage. The marriage is the one part of this where you actually might have an answer." Caleb shrugged. "Where I come from, when a guy's screaming at you real loud about one thing, it's because he needs your eyes off something else. That's not business school. That's just guys." The kitchen was very quiet. "Say the last part again," Victoria said. "He needs your eyes off something." Victoria Hale sat down slowly. "Ohio," she said. She was up until 4. Caleb knew because he got up at 4 and the light was on. She was at the dining table with 11 binders open and her hair down and her shoes somewhere across the room, and she looked up at him with an expression he had genuinely never seen on her. "Sit down," she said. "It's 4 in the morning." "Sit down." He sat. "The Ohio plant," Victoria said. 1,100 jobs. I saved it 18 months ago. Do you know how? You flew out there. I flew out there and I fought the board for 11 weeks, and I won by 1 vote, and everybody in that room told me I was being sentimental." She pulled a page. "Adrian voted for it." So Adrian Cross has never voted for a sentimental thing in his life." She turned the binder. "He voted for it. And then he asked to chair the restructuring committee, which nobody wanted, because chairing a restructuring committee is 1,100 hours of paperwork about drywall. And you let him. I thanked him." Her voice cracked, one hairline fracture gone. "I stood up in front of 11 people and thanked Adrian Cross for taking the ugly job." Caleb looked at the binder. It was columns. It was thousands of columns. "What am I looking at?" "Vendors," Victoria said. Every contractor paid out of the Ohio restructuring line for 18 months, 406 of them. Caleb's head came up. What? What? Nothing. He shook it off. 406. Okay, so what's wrong with them? Nothing, Victoria said. Every single one is clean, registered, insured, filed. I've been through 90 of them tonight and they're perfect. She pressed her hands flat on the table. And that's what's wrong with them. Do you know what a real vendor list looks like? It's a disaster. Somebody's brother-in-law's roofing company. Half of them are late. 2 of them are always in litigation. It's a mess because construction is a mess because people are a mess. She looked up. This list has no mess in it, Caleb. It's the cleanest thing I've ever seen, and it's for drywall. Caleb sat back. Okay, he said. Okay that I actually get. You do? Yeah. He rubbed his jaw. That's a paper trail somebody made. That's not a trail somebody left. Yes. Yeah, but Victoria... He gestured at the binders. You've got 406 companies and 18 months and 9 days. You're not going to read your way to the bottom of that. That's not a reading problem. Then what is it? Caleb was quiet for a moment. It's a rescue, he said. I don't follow. When a boat goes down, you get a debris field, miles of it, and every rookie wants to search the whole field, and every rookie fails because the field's too big and the light's going. He leaned forward. So you don't search the field. You find the drift. You figure out which way the water's moving, and you go stand where it's taking things, and then you wait, and the thing comes to you. Victoria stared at him. Money moves like water, Caleb said. Doesn't matter how many companies he made up. It's all going somewhere. So stop reading the 406. Find the drift. Victoria Hale did not say anything for a very long time. Then she said, Dorothy's going to hate this. Dorothy Vance hated it. Absolutely not. Dorothy. You want to give a forensic accounting mandate to a man with a misdemeanor arraignment. He's my husband. The word hit the room like a dropped plate. Dorothy stopped. Victoria's face didn't change, but something behind it did. He's my husband, she said again, quieter. Legally, completely on paper, which means privilege attaches, which means anything he finds inside this house is protected, which means Adrian can subpoena every accountant in Boston and he cannot get one word of it. Dorothy looked at her for a long moment. You've thought about this. I've thought about nothing else since 4 a.m. He's not an accountant. No, Victoria said. He's the only person I've ever met who reads a document twice. Caleb found it on day 6. He found it at 2:40 a.m. at a dining table with a legal pad and a pen and a cup of coffee that had been cold for 2 hours. And the way he found it was so stupid that he'd be embarrassed telling it under oath later in a room with a stenographer. He found it because of an address. Victoria. She didn't wake up. She was on the couch 12 feet away, sitting up with a binder in her lap, which is how she'd slept for 4 days. Victoria. She came awake all at once the way she did everything. What? Meridian Structural Group, Ohio vendor, paid 11 times, 1.4 million total. He turned the pad. Address is 4200 Kettering Road Suite, 300. So is Ballard Northern Supply. He tapped the pad. And Reyes Materials Partners. And Hartley Freight Systems. Victoria came off the couch so fast the binder hit the floor. That's not possible. Same suite, same floor, same building. Caleb didn't look up. I called it. It's a mail drop. Woman named Cheryl. Nice lady. She says there's 160 companies in Suite 300 and she's never seen one of them. Caleb. There's more. He flipped the page. Ballard Northern Supply. Reyes Materials. Hartley Freight. He looked up at her. You said Adrian moved 3 votes. Hartley, Reyes, Ballard. Victoria Hale stood in the middle of her own living room at 2:40 a.m. and did not move. He named the shells after them, she said. Yeah. He named them after the men he was buying. Yeah. Why would he? She stopped. Her hands came up to her mouth. Oh. Yeah, Caleb said grimly. That's an insurance policy, ma'am. That's a guy who wants 3 men to know that if he ever goes down, the paperwork goes down with their name on it. Victoria sat down on the arm of the couch. Ballard, she said. Yeah. Ballard hasn't returned my calls in 6 days because he's not being bought, Caleb said quietly. He's being held. They went at it for 11 straight hours. Caleb had never seen anything like it. She went through a company's entire skeleton with a pen and a legal pad, and she did not stop, did not eat, did not stand up, and at hour 9 she said, "There be," in the flattest voice he'd ever heard, and turned the pad around. $11.2 million, she said. In 18 months, out of the Ohio line, through 160 companies in a mail drop in a strip mall into 4 accounts and then into 1. She circled it. Cayman, held by an entity called Kettering Holdings. Who owns Kettering Holdings? Nobody. It's owned by another entity, which is owned by another entity. So we can't prove it's him. No, Victoria said. We can't. Caleb put his hands on the back of a chair. Okay, he said. So we've got nothing. We have $11.2 million missing dollars and no name. Which he'll say is your $11.2 million, Caleb said slowly, because it came out of your company on your watch, out of a line item you personally fought for, and he chaired the committee you thanked him for chairing. Victoria Hale went very white. Oh my God, she said. Yeah, that's the play. She stood up. That's been the play the entire time. He wasn't hiding it from me. He was building it for me. Say it plain. He stole $11 million out of a project I championed through a committee I asked him to chair, and in 9 days he's going to stand up in that room and find it. Her voice was rising, and she let it. He gets to be the man who caught the fraud. He gets Ballard Reyes and Hartley voting with him because their names are on the shells. And I get to be the woman who married her security guard to keep control of a company she was looting. The room was silent. And the marriage, Caleb said. The marriage is the reason. Victoria pressed her fingers to her eyes. That's why he burned a year of favors to make it public. He needed a motive. A fake marriage is a woman who's desperate. A desperate woman is a woman who steals. He didn't leak our marriage to hurt me, Caleb. He leaked it to explain me. Caleb sat down slowly. He's been building this for 1.5 years, he said. Yes. And he built it before I ever walked into that ballroom. Victoria stopped. Yes, she said. So the marriage isn't the thing he's attacking? Caleb looked up at her. The marriage is the thing he needed. He didn't have a motive story until we handed him one. He laughed one short, horrible breath of it. Ma'am, I gave him the last piece, in a boardroom, as a joke. Don't. He couldn't have written it better himself. Don't. Victoria's voice came out with an edge he'd never heard. Do not sit in my house and do that. Do you understand me? Do not. Caleb stopped. If you had not crossed that floor, Victoria said, I would have lost this company in 9 months without ever knowing why. He would have taken $11 million and my father's name and my 4 billion and 1,100 people in Ohio, and I would have gone to my grave thinking I lost to a better operator. She was shaking. You're the only reason I know. You're the only reason, Caleb. So don't you dare stand there and apologize for being in my life. The clock on the microwave said 1:11 a.m. Okay, Caleb said quietly. Okay. Okay. He rubbed his face. Then here's the problem. We can prove 11 million left. We can't prove it went to him. No. So we need a man. What? You can't get the name off paper, Caleb said. The paper's clean, he built it clean. So you don't get it off paper, you get it off a person. He looked at her. Somebody signed something. 160 companies, $11 million. Somebody somewhere physically signed a form and put a real name on it because you cannot make a bank account out of air, And the guy who made those accounts is a guy, and he's alive, and he's scared. Victoria stared at him. Kettering Holdings had a registered agent, she said slowly. There you go. For 11 months, and then in October the agent resigned, which is unusual. Agents don't resign, they get replaced. Name. Victoria flipped 4 pages with her hands moving fast. Gerald, she said. Caleb went cold. You're Gerald. No. She looked up white. A Gerald. Gerald Lynn. There's a Gerald in every 4th document in this country, Caleb. It's a generation. She shook her head hard. Gerald Lynn, attorney, Cleveland. He formed 41 of the 160, and then he stopped all at once in 1 week in October and never formed another one. He quit. Nobody quits $11 million. They do, Caleb said, if they're about to get paid for it in a different currency. Victoria's head came up. He's a witness. He's a scared witness, Caleb said. Which is better? Scared guys talk. It's the calm ones you can't move. Gerald Lynn didn't answer 11 calls. He answered the 12th at 8:40 on a Sunday morning, and he said 4 words before he hung up. I have a daughter. Caleb sat there looking at the dead phone. Then he called back. It rang 9 times. So do I, Caleb said when it picked up. Silence on the other end. Breathing. Mr. Lynn. My name's Caleb Walker. I'm not a cop. I'm not a lawyer. I've got $111 and a misdemeanor. I'm the guy from the picture. The one with his hand on the rich guy's chest. More breathing. I got a kid too, Caleb said. She's 7.5. She sleeps with the hall light on and she reads ahead and she's not supposed to and she thinks, I don't know. He kept his voice low and even, the voice for a man in the water at minute 40. So I'm not going to tell you it's going to be fine. You know it's not fine. You've known for 11 months since October, since whatever happened in October. The breathing stopped. How do you know about October? Gerald Lynn said. Because you quit in October, Caleb said. 41 companies and then nothing. Guys don't quit in the middle unless something happened. Somebody said something to you. He waited. Or somebody said something about her. The silence went on so long, Caleb thought the line had died. Then Gerald Lynn said in a voice like a man surfacing. He knew her school. Caleb closed his eyes. Mr. Walker. He called me at my office and he said it like he was making conversation. He said, Fairmount's a good school. My niece went there. That's all. That's the whole thing. He never said one other word about it. 11 months. A ragged breath. He never had to. Yeah, Caleb said quietly. I know that trick. You do. I watched him do a version of it in a ballroom in front of 200 people. Guy puts his hand on you real gentle so everybody can see he could. Caleb leaned forward. Mr. Lynn, I've got 9 days. Then he stands up in a room and blames a woman for $11 million he took, and he wins, and he never gets asked about Fairmount again. You don't understand what he is. I understand exactly what he is, Caleb said. I've pulled a lot of men out of the water. Some of them were bad. Not one of them ever needed an audience. He took a breath. You didn't call the cops in October. Why not? Because I have a daughter. No, Caleb said. That's why you didn't call in November. And December. And every day since. But in October, in the first hour before you were scared, why didn't you call? Nothing. Because you didn't have anybody who'd stand next to you, Caleb said. You had a phone and a name, and no one on earth who'd be in the room when it landed. Gerald Lynn made a sound. It wasn't a word. So here it is. Caleb's voice didn't shake. I'm not going to tell you you're going to be fine. I've got no business saying that. But I'll tell you the thing I used to say when a guy'd been in the water 40 minutes and stopped kicking. What? I've got you, Caleb said. You don't have to do the rest of it. The line was quiet for 11 seconds. Then Gerald Lynn said, There's a video. Caleb didn't move. He made me witness the signature, Lynn said. Kettering Holdings. He wanted it notarized, and he wanted a video record, because he doesn't trust anybody. He doesn't trust his own lawyers. He made me record it on my own phone, in my own office, because he wanted to know exactly where the copy was. His voice broke. I never deleted it. 11 months. I've had it on a phone in a drawer for 11 months, Mr. Walker, and every night I think about deleting it, and every night I don't, and I don't know why. I know why, Caleb said. Why? Because you knew somebody was going to call you eventually, Caleb said. And you wanted to be able to say yes. Caleb came out of the room at 9:20 in the morning. Victoria was in the kitchen doorway. She'd heard the last of it. He could see that she'd heard the last of it. Was that real? She said. That was real. There's a video. There's a video. Victoria Hale put her hand on the door frame. Of Adrian, she said. Signing Kettering Holdings, on camera, in a lawyer's office in Cleveland, on a phone in a drawer. Caleb's voice came out strange. He was so scared of a leak he made the witness film it. He built 160 companies out of nothing, and then he handed the one real thing in the whole pile to a guy he thought he'd broken. Because he thought fear was enough. Because he always thought fear was enough, Caleb said. It's the only tool he's got. He put his hand on your neck in front of 200 people, and 200 people looked at the floor, and I bet you every dollar I don't have, that's the moment he decided he could do anything. Victoria didn't answer. Then she said very quietly, He was right about 200 of them. Yeah, Caleb said. He was. She looked up at him. Neither of them said the next thing. Then, from the hallway at exactly the wrong moment in shark pajamas with a flashlight 7.5 years old. Why is everybody being quiet? Caleb turned around. Bug? You're doing the tired face, Lily said to her father. Then she looked at Victoria. And you're doing it too. You're both doing it. Nobody's doing the mad face. She narrowed her eyes with terrible, terrible accuracy. That means it's the kind where other people messed up and you gotta be nice about it. Caleb looked at Victoria. Victoria looked at Caleb. Lily, Victoria said. Come here a second. Lily came. There's a man who did something wrong, Victoria said. A lot of somethings. And in 8 days I have to stand up in a room and prove it, and I've been very frightened, and I've been pretending I'm not. Lily's eyes went huge. Are you gonna win? I don't know, Victoria said, and Lily Walker put her small hand on Victoria Hale's arm and said the thing her father had said to her in a hallway on the worst night of his life, word for word, because that's how it works, because that's the whole curriculum. Then we'll be the answer together. Victoria Hale did not cry, but she had to turn her face away, and she stood there with a child's hand on her arm, and Caleb watched the most feared woman in Boston discover that she'd already lost the thing she'd spent 41 pages protecting. 8 days. Caleb learned what 8 days meant at 6:40 the next morning when Dorothy Vance let herself into the residence without knocking and put a piece of paper on the kitchen island. They moved it up. Victoria didn't touch the paper. To when? Friday. That's 4 days. That's 4 days, Dorothy said. Caleb watched Victoria read it. Her face did absolutely nothing, which by now he knew was the loudest thing about her. He can't do that, she said. There's a notice requirement. 14 days for a special session. It's in the bylaws. It's in Article 6, yes, unless a majority of seated directors sign a waiver. Dorothy's voice was very level. 6 of them signed it at 10 o'clock last night. Ballard signed it at 10:04. Victoria set the paper down. Ballard signed it, she said. Yes? Ballard signed a waiver of notice against me. Yes. Caleb watched her hands. That was the tell the face never moved, but her hands went flat on the counter, pressing like a woman holding a table down in a storm. Okay, Victoria said. Victoria. Okay. She looked up. Dorothy. Thank you. Go to the office. Act completely normal. Reschedule the Tuesday things for Tuesday like there's going to be a Tuesday. Dorothy didn't move. 6 years, Dorothy said. May I say one thing that isn't my job? No. I'm going to anyway. Dorothy picked up her bag. Whatever you're about to do on Friday, do it as yourself, not as your father. You've been running that man's company for 6 years, like you're still waiting for him to grade it. She went to the door. He's dead, Victoria. He's been dead 6 years. He's not going to give you the A. The door shut. Victoria stood there with her hands on the counter for a very long time. Was she always like that? Caleb asked. Every day, Victoria said. For 6 years. So, the problem with 4 days was Cleveland. He won't send it, Caleb said. I called him at 5, 11 rings. He picked up and I said the word Friday, and he made a sound like Victoria. He made a sound like a guy going under. So we go get it. That's what I'm saying. Then we go get it. No. Caleb put a hand up. I go get it. You're the CEO of a company that's about to accuse a board member of stealing $11 million. If you're on a plane to Cleveland on Wednesday, and there's a photograph of it that's not evidence anymore, that's collusion. That's you and a witness in a room with no lawyer. So you'll go with a lawyer. I'll go with Rick. Victoria stopped. Who's Rick? Guy in the tie, Caleb said. At the wedding. Your friend is not a... My friend spent 9 years as a Navy Master-at-Arms and 11 more running a security firm, and he has a chain of custody habit that is genuinely a mental illness, Caleb said. Rick Vance has never touched a piece of evidence in his life without writing down what time it was. He wrote down what time it was at my wedding. He showed me the note. Victoria looked at him for a second and a half. Fine. And a lawyer, Caleb conceded. Bring the lawyer. Bring 6. But Rick carries it because if Adrian Cross knows the video exists, then the second that phone comes out of that drawer, it is the single most valuable object in the state of Ohio. And I want a guy next to it who's been shot at. You've been shot at. I've been drowned, Caleb said. It's not the same skill set. They flew Wednesday morning. Gerald Lynn's office was on the 4th floor of a building with a dry cleaner in the lobby, and Gerald Lynn was 51 years old and looked 70, and when he opened the door, he didn't say hello. He said, "You're bigger than the picture." Everybody says that. Lynn let them in. There were 3 boxes on the floor, and a coat over a chair, and a framed photo on the desk of a girl in a graduation gown, and Caleb clocked the photo, and then made himself stop looking at it. Fairmount, Lynn said, catching it. She's 11 now. That's her 5th grade. They do gowns for 5th grade. They do gowns for everything now. Yeah, Caleb said. Mine did a gown for kindergarten. I cried. It was humiliating. Gerald Lynn laughed. It came out of him like something breaking loose, and then his face folded, and he sat down on the edge of his own desk and put a hand over his eyes. I can't do this, he said. Rick started to say something. Caleb put 2 fingers on his arm, and Rick shut up, which in 22 years had happened maybe 4 times. Caleb sat down in the client chair. He didn't lean forward. He didn't do the voice. Okay, he said. Okay. Yeah, okay. Caleb shrugged. You can't do it. That's allowed. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know what it's like to have a guy say your kid's school out loud on a phone call. Lynn lowered his hand. You're not going to argue. Nah. Everybody argues. Everybody's an idiot, Caleb said. Mr. Lynn, in 12 years, I never once talked a man into being rescued. Not one. You know what you do when a guy's in the water and he won't take the harness? You don't yell. Yelling's for the movies. You just get in the water with him, and you stay there. And after a while, he's not alone in the water anymore, and then he takes the harness. It's not a speech. It's just company. Gerald Lynn stared at the carpet. Friday, he said. Friday. And if I give it to you, he finds out on Friday. Yeah. And on Saturday, my daughter goes to school. Yeah, Caleb said. She does. Lynn's jaw worked. I want you to tell me it's going to be fine. I'm not going to do that. Everyone tells me it's going to be fine. Then everyone's lying to you, Caleb said, and his voice went hard for the first time. Mr. Lin, I lost 9 people. 9. I know all their names. I can tell you the water temperature on every single one of them, and not one time, not once did I tell a man in the water it was going to be fine. Because they know. They're not stupid. They're in the water. He leaned forward now. So no, I won't tell you that. What I'll tell you is what's true. If you hand me that phone on Friday morning, that woman stands up in a room with 11 of the richest people in Massachusetts, and she says your name, and she says this man was threatened, and after that, there is no version of the world where anything happens to your kid quietly. That's the whole offer. I'm not offering you safe, I'm offering you loud. Lin's eyes came up. Loud, he said. He does everything with an audience, Caleb said. So we take the audience. The office was silent for 11 seconds. Then Gerald Lin got up, walked to a filing cabinet, unlocked the bottom drawer, and took out a phone in a Ziploc bag with a strip of masking tape on it and a date written in ballpoint. October 9th, he said. I wrote it on there the same day. I don't know why. Rick Vance took out a notebook. 9:41 a.m., Rick said, writing. Eastern. Received from Gerald Lin in hand in his office in the presence of Caleb Walker, and... He glanced at the lawyer in the corner. What's your name? Priya Raman. And Priya Raman, attorney. He looked up. I'm going to need you all to sign this, and then I'm going to need everybody to look at me while I put it in the bag, because in about 9 months, some very expensive man is going to stand in a room and say, I made this up. You're serious, Lin said. He's like this, Caleb said. He did it at my wedding. Adrian Cross made his move on Thursday. He didn't call Victoria. He didn't call the board. He called Lily's school. Caleb found out at 2:11 in the afternoon from a woman named Mrs. Oyelaran in the front office, whose voice on the phone had the specific tightness of somebody doing something they'd decided to do. Mr. Walker, I want to be careful about this. Careful about what? A man called this morning asking about your daughter's pickup authorization list. He was very polite. He said he was from a family office and there was a security review. Caleb's whole body went cold and quiet the way it used to at 400 feet over black water. Did you give him anything? Of course not. Mrs. Oyelaran? Mr. Walker. A pause. I've been at this school 19 years. Nobody polite has ever called about a child's pickup list. Nobody polite has ever called. Caleb closed his eyes. Thank you, he said. Thank you. I mean that. Is she safe? She's gonna be. That's not what I asked. No, Caleb said. It isn't. He hung up. Then he sat in the truck outside a hardware store for 4 minutes and did nothing at all, because everything he wanted to do in that 4 minutes was something he could never take back. Then he called Victoria. She picked up on the first ring. He called Lily's school, Caleb said. Silence. Victoria, I heard you. Say something. I'm going to end him, Victoria Hale said in a voice so calm it made the hair stand up on Caleb's arms. I'm going to end him on Friday, and I'm going to enjoy it, and I have never in my life enjoyed anything, and I'm going to enjoy this. Hey! He called a school, Caleb. I know what he did. Caleb gripped the wheel. And I need you to hear me right now, because this is the only thing I actually know how to do. You do not go into the water angry. Ever. Angry guys drown. Angry guys go in with a plan and lose it in the first 9 seconds, because the water does something they didn't like. He breathed out. He wants you angry. That's the whole trick. That's all he's ever done. That's the hand on the neck. He needs you to be the woman who lost her temper, because a woman who lost her temper is a woman who did something desperate. And desperate women steal $11 million. Don't hand it to him. The line was quiet. Then what do I do? Victoria said. Tell me what to do. Be boring, Caleb said. Be the most boring person who has ever walked into a room. Let him do all the yelling. That guy's whole life is an audience, so give him one, and then let him say every single word of it before you open the drawer. Another silence. That's very good, Victoria said quietly. It's not mine, it's Rick's. Rick says the loudest guy in the boat is always the guy who's about to be wrong. Dato. That night, Lily wouldn't sleep. Caleb sat on the edge of her bed at 11, and she was on her back with the flashlight on the ceiling making a circle and not reading, which was worse than anything. Bug. Is it tomorrow? Yeah, it's tomorrow. Is she scared? Caleb thought about lying. He'd thought about lying about 9 times in 4 months and hadn't done it yet, and he wasn't going to start at 11 o'clock at night. Yeah, he said. She's real scared. Lily was quiet. Dad, can I say something bad? Always. I don't care about the company. Caleb laughed once. No? I don't even know what it is. The flashlight circle went around. It's just a building where she goes and comes back tired. There's 9,000 people in it. I know, Lily said with enormous 7.5-year-old exasperation. But I don't know any of them. She turned her head. Dad, if she loses, does she still live with us? And there it was. Caleb sat there. Bug, he said, we live with her. Yeah, but, Lily's chin. Does she? Caleb didn't have an answer. He genuinely did not have one, and he sat there in the dark with his daughter and had to just not have one. I don't know, he said. Lily turned the flashlight off. That's what I thought, she said in the exact voice her mother used to use 4 years dead, right there in the room. Caleb got up and went to the door. Victoria was standing in the hallway. She'd heard all of it. He could see she'd heard all of it. She was still in her coat and her keys were in her hand, and she wasn't moving. Neither of them said anything. Then Victoria turned around and walked into the kitchen and stood at the island with her back to him, and when Caleb came in behind her, she said without turning, Don't. I didn't say anything. You were going to be kind. Her voice was very tight. Don't be kind right now. I have to be a certain thing in 11 hours, and I cannot be that thing if you're kind to me tonight. Caleb stopped where he was. Okay, he said. Thank you. Can I say one unkind thing? Fine. You've got 4 votes, Caleb said. You've had 4 votes for a month, and you keep counting to 5 like the 5th one's a thing you find. He leaned on the doorframe. Ballard's not a vote. He's a guy. Guys aren't found, they're asked. Have you asked him? Victoria turned around. He signed the waiver. That's not what I asked. He signed a document at 10:04 at night against a woman he taught to read a term sheet. Victoria. Caleb's voice was quiet. Have you asked him? Silence. I've called him 9 times. That's not asking. That's calling. Caleb pushed off the frame. Ma'am, that man has had his name on a shell company for 18 months. 18 months of getting up every morning, knowing that if the thing ever cracks open, Ballard Northern Supply is right there in the paperwork in his father's name. And everybody he's ever met is going to say, well, I guess we know who Ballard was. He shook his head. He's not bought. Bought guys are relaxed. That guy hasn't slept in a year and a half. He's exactly where Gerald Lynn was. Victoria stood very still. You want me to go to Ballard's house? She said. At midnight. The night before the vote. Alone. No, Caleb said. I want you to go to his house at midnight and not say a single word about the vote. Then what would I say? Say what you never say, Caleb said. Say you're scared. Victoria Hale looked at him like he'd suggested she set herself on fire. That's the play, Caleb said. That's the whole play. Every man in that room has spent 6 years watching you be the strongest thing they've ever seen, and Adrian spent a year and a half telling them you're a machine that finally broke. So don't be strong at Ballard. Be true at him. He's the one guy in that room who knew you when you were 14. He's the only one who can tell the difference. Victoria didn't move for a long time. And if he says no, then he says no, Caleb said. And you go in Friday with 4 votes and a phone and a bag, and we find out what the room's made of. She picked up her keys. At the door, she stopped. Caleb. Yeah. I've never done that, she said. The thing you just said, in my entire life. Not once. Not to anyone. I know, Caleb said. That's why it'll work. Ginch. She got back at 2:40. Caleb was awake, obviously. He was at the dining table with a legal pad, and she came in and put her keys down and stood there in her coat and didn't say anything for so long that he stopped writing. Well, he cried, Victoria said. Caleb set the pen down. He opened the door and he had a robe on and he's 69 years old and he said, Vicky, you shouldn't be here. Her voice was completely level and completely wrong. Nobody's called me Vicky since 2009. What did you say? I said I was scared. And he stood in his own doorway and cried, Victoria said. For about a minute. He didn't say anything. He just stood there. And then he said he told me about the accounts in March. He told me my name was on them. He told me it was a courtesy. A courtesy. Caleb. And then he said, I've been trying to figure out how to tell you since March, and every single day it got harder. Caleb closed his eyes. He's testifying, Victoria said. Tomorrow, in the room. He asked if he could go first. Why first? Because he said if he waits, he'll lose his nerve. Victoria finally took her coat off. She did it very slowly, like a woman who'd forgotten how her own arms worked. 69 years old. He's going to lose his seat, his reputation, probably his license. He asked if he could go first. Caleb sat back. That's 5, he said. That's 5. Victoria, don't, she said. Don't say it. If you say it out loud, I'll stop being able to do this. Friday. 51st floor, 11 seats, same table. Caleb wore the funeral suit because it was still the only suit and because he'd decided somewhere around 4 in the morning that he wanted it to be. Adrian Cross came in at 9 sharp and he was good. Caleb had to give it to him. He came in the way you come into a room you've already won. He touched a shoulder. He laughed at something Hartley said he did not once look at Victoria, which was the most expensive move in the whole performance. Then he saw Caleb. He stopped for about 1/5 of a second. Then he smiled. Mr. Walker, Adrian said. You're still here. Yeah? How's the arraignment? Tuesday. Adrian sat down. That's a shame. That's really a shame. A man tries to help somebody and it just follows him around. You called my daughter's school, Caleb said. The whole room went quiet. Adrian Cross looked genuinely warmly puzzled. I'm sorry. Yesterday, 11:40 in the morning, asked about her pickup list. I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, Adrian said, and Caleb watched about 6 board members decide right then that he didn't. That's the trick, Caleb thought. That's the whole trick. He does it so gentle you look crazy describing it. He sat down and said nothing else. Victoria had asked him for exactly one thing at 6 in the morning in the kitchen, with her hands flat on the counter. Be furniture. Until I say. So he was furniture. Adrian Cross talked for 51 minutes. He was good at that too. He was sad about it. That was the genius of it. Caleb thought the man was visibly grieving. He put the contract up on the screen, all 41 pages, and he walked them through it like a doctor walking a family through a scan. Section 14, Adrian said quietly. $800,000. Gentlemen, I want to be careful here because I've known Victoria since she was a girl. But I want you to look at that number, and I want you to ask yourselves a very ugly question. Where does a person who is worth $4 billion on paper get $800,000 in liquid cash? He let it sit. Because I've looked, and it did not come from her accounts. Murmuring. There it is, Caleb thought. It came out of Horizon Global, Adrian said. Out of an operating line. And gentlemen, once I started looking at operating lines, he clicked. I'm afraid it gets much worse. And then he did it. He put up Ohio. $11.2 million. 406 vendors. A mail drop in a strip mall on Kettering Road. He did it beautifully. He was almost weeping. I chaired that committee, Adrian said. I chaired it, and I missed it, and I will carry that. But I want you to understand what I think happened, because I don't think Victoria is a criminal. He put a hand on the table. I think she's a woman who was told by her own father in his own will that she wasn't enough. I think she's spent 6 years trying to prove a dead man wrong. And I think that when the clock ran out, she panicked. She bought a husband and she funded it, and it got away from her." He looked around the table. "That's not evil. That's a tragedy. But it is a fiduciary breach, and we have 9,000 people, and I am asking you to be adults about it." The room was absolutely silent. Caleb looked at Victoria. She was writing. She wasn't even looking at him. She was writing on a legal pad calmly, like a woman taking notes at a lecture on drywall. Be boring, Caleb thought, and felt something in his chest that he could not name. "Victoria," Gerald said gently. "Would you like to respond?" Victoria Hale put down her pen. "Yes," she said. "Thank you, Adrian. That was thorough." Adrian inclined his head. "I'd like to make 3 corrections and then I'd like to yield the floor," Victoria said. "First, the $800,000 did not come from an operating line. It came from a personal instrument secured against my equity executed on March 4th, and Dorothy is passing you the documentation now." Papers slid down the table. "Second, Mr. Walker has not received $1 of it. Not one. It's in escrow. It's been in escrow since the day we married, and he has never once asked me about it. Not once in 4 months. You'll find that unusual." "I did." Adrian's face didn't move. "Third," Victoria said. "Adrian, you said you looked at the Ohio line." "I did." "You said you missed it." "To my great shame." "How many vendors did you review?" A pause. About a half-second. "All of them," Adrian said. "All 406. "Yes." "Personally?" "With my staff." "Then you saw," Victoria said, "that 160 of them share a suite number." The room stopped. "That's a mail drop," Adrian said smoothly. "Small vendors use registered agents, Victoria. That's completely standard." "It is," Victoria agreed. "That's why I didn't find it. My husband found it." And every head in the room turned to the guy in the funeral suit. "He's not an accountant," Adrian said, and he laughed, and nobody laughed with him, and Caleb watched the exact moment Adrian Cross heard that himself. "No," Victoria said. "He reads things twice. Mr. Ballard." Ballard stood up. He was 69 years old, and his hands were shaking so badly he had to put down the paper he'd brought. "In March of last year," Ballard said, "Adrian Cross came to my office and told me that my name was on 4 companies I'd never heard of." His voice broke unheard. "He said it was a courtesy. He said he'd wanted me to know before anyone else did." "That's a lie. I've had that in my chest for 16 months, Ballard said to the table, to nobody, to all of them. "And I signed the waiver on Wednesday night at 4 minutes past 10, because he called me at 10 o'clock and reminded me. That's the actual reason. There's no other reason. I'm 69 years old, and I signed a document against a girl I've known since she was 14, because a man reminded me." Hartley said, "Oh my God." Reyes had gone the color of paper. "This is theater," Adrian said, and his voice was still perfectly warm. "This is a frightened man and a frightened woman, and there is not one document in this room with my name on it. Not one. Because there isn't one." He spread his hands and he smiled, and Caleb saw it the real thing for 1 second. Underneath, he's enjoying this. "I've been in this business 30 years, gentlemen. Feelings aren't evidence. Show me a signature." Victoria Hale sat perfectly still. "Okay," she said, and she nodded at Dorothy, and Dorothy turned on the screen. It was a phone video. Vertical. Bad light. An office in Cleveland, with a dry cleaner in the lobby. And Adrian Cross filling the frame saying, "Is it running, Gerald? Is it running? Good. Now hold it steady and get the pen, and don't you ever get cute about where this file lives." And then his hand, and the pen, and the signature, and the date in the corner, October 9th. Nobody in the room breathed. The video ran 11 more seconds. On it, Adrian looked up at the camera, into it familiar and warm and gentle, and said, "Relax, Gerald. Nobody's ever going to see this." The screen went black. Adrian Cross did not move. And Caleb, watching him, thought, there it is. Not fear, not rage. Astonishment. The look of a man watching a chair stand up and speak. You put your hand on her neck, Caleb said. He hadn't planned to say it. He'd promised to be furniture. But it came out of him quiet in a silent room, and every head turned. In front of 200 people, Caleb said. And they all looked at the floor. And I think that's the day you decided you could do anything, because that's what the floor means. He looked around the table at Gerald, at Hartley, at Reyes, at 11 of the richest people in Massachusetts. I keep hearing about the contract. Fine. It's true. We signed a contract. I was broke and she was cornered, and we put our names on 41 pages, and none of it was romantic. He stood up. But a contract can tell you where the money goes, Caleb said. It can't tell you who gets up at 4 a.m. to look at drywall invoices for a woman she's not supposed to love. It can't make a 69-year-old man cry in his own doorway. It can't make a lawyer in Cleveland keep a phone in a drawer for 11 months, because somewhere in the back of his head he was hoping somebody'd call. His voice didn't rise. A contract can control money. It cannot control what two people build when nobody's looking. That's the whole thing. That's all I came to say. He sat down. Gerald, the old man, 71, the one who'd said personal stability in a hotel room 5 months ago, took off his glasses. Adrian, he said, get out of my boardroom. What? It took 9 minutes. They didn't vote on Victoria. They voted on Adrian 11-0, and Ballard voted, and then Ballard resigned in the same breath, and Gerald said no, and Ballard said Gerald, and Gerald said no, sit down, we'll fix you later. And it was, Caleb thought, the single most human thing he'd ever seen rich people do. Adrian Cross stood up. He straightened his jacket with 2 fingers, and on his way past Caleb's chair, he stopped and leaned down and said pleasantly, warmly, for an audience of one, you know she's going to leave you in 6 months. Caleb didn't look up. Yeah, he said, that's between me and her. No. Afterward, they stood in the hallway on the 51st floor with the harbor out the window, and neither of them said anything for a long time. Say it, Caleb said. Say what? Whatever it is. You've had a face on for 11 minutes. Victoria looked at the glass. You asked me once why I said yes, she said. In the boardroom. You said it was a joke, and I said I accept, and you asked me why, and I gave you an answer about crossing 15 feet of floor. It was a good answer. It was a true answer, Victoria said. It just wasn't the reason. Caleb went still. There were 4 seconds, she said, between when you said it and when I said okay. 11 men were laughing, and in those 4 seconds I forgot it was a joke. Victoria, I forgot it was a joke, she said, and something in my chest said yes, and it said it before I did, and it wasn't about the company. It wasn't about the will. It was a 32-year-old woman in a room full of men who'd been discussing her like weather hearing. One person say, I'd stand next to you, and wanting it so badly that she said yes out loud before she could stop herself. Her voice was completely steady. And then I spent 4 months building 41 pages of reasons why that wasn't what happened. Actuarial. Assets that don't depreciate. All of it. I built it afterward, Caleb. I've never done that in my life. I have never once wanted something first and justified it second. Caleb didn't move. And that's the part I can't. She stopped. Started again. You have a daughter who calls me mom by accident. You have a rule about not lying to her, and I said yes to you in 4 seconds for a reason I have never said out loud to a living human being, and now there are 208 days on the clock, and every single one of them is a lie I'm telling that child. She turned and looked at him. So that's the reason, Victoria Hale said. You asked. And Caleb Walker stood on the 51st floor of a building he'd once been paid $340 a night to stand outside of, and wished with his whole chest, with everything in him, that he had never asked. He didn't answer her. That was the thing Caleb would think about later, that he had 11 seconds to say something, and he used all 11 of them saying nothing, standing on the 51st floor with the harbor behind him, and the woman he'd just defended in front of him, and his mouth would not work. Victoria nodded once, like a woman confirming a number. "That's what I thought," she said, and walked to the elevator, and the doors closed on her, and Caleb Walker stood in a hallway with his hands at his sides. Chanete. They didn't talk about it for 9 days. They talked about everything else. They talked about the arraignment, which evaporated on a Tuesday morning when Priya Raman put 4 minutes of ballroom footage in front of a prosecutor who watched it twice and said, "That's not assault, that's a bouncer," and dismissed it before lunch. They talked about Ohio, which Gerald put back on the agenda himself personally at 9 in the morning with a sheepishness that Caleb found genuinely touching in a 71-year-old man. They talked about Gerald Lynn, who did not lose his license because Victoria Hale hired 11 lawyers to make sure of it, and whose daughter went to school on Saturday loudly with 2 of Rick's guys in a truck across the street for 6 weeks until it stopped being necessary. They talked about groceries. They did not talk about 4 seconds in a boardroom. Lily noticed on day 3. "You're being weird," she said. "I'm not being weird." "You're saying thank you," Lily said with contempt, "to each other, in the kitchen. That's called manners bug." "It's called weird," Lily said, and went back to her rocks. On the 9th night, Victoria came into the kitchen at 11 and put a piece of paper on the island. Caleb looked at it. It was 1 page. After 41, 1 page looked obscene. "What is it?" "Termination," Victoria said. "Mutual, effective immediately. Section 14 stands the escrow releases Friday, all of it, plus the education trust, plus the medical. You keep everything." Her voice was perfectly level. "You don't owe me 208 days. You never did. The company's safe. The conditions satisfied, the will only required that I marry, and I married, and there's no clawback for a divorce. I checked 11 times. Caleb didn't touch it. "You're firing me," he said. "I'm releasing you." Same thing with better manners. Caleb. "No, I got it." He nodded slowly. "That's a real clean piece of paper. That's the cleanest thing I've ever seen. It's got no mess in it at all." Victoria's jaw tightened. "Don't. You know what you told me at 4 in the morning, Caleb said, about the vendor list. You said the problem was it was too clean. You said real things are a disaster. You said construction's a mess because people are a mess." He tapped the page once. "So what's this?" "This is me not making that child live inside a countdown." "That's not." "I said a thing to you in a hallway," Victoria said, and her voice finally cracked 1 hairline fracture, and this time she didn't cover it. "I said the truest thing I've ever said to anyone, and you stood there for 11 seconds and said nothing, and I have spent 9 days being fine about it. And I'm very good at being fine, Caleb. I've been fine since I was 9 years old. I could be fine at you for 200 more days, and you'd never know." She pressed her hands flat on the counter. "But she'd know. She's 7.5 and she reads faces for a living, and she'd know. And I am not going to teach that little girl that this is what love looks like. You said that to me in a conference room the first week. You said it's your one job. You were right." Caleb stood there. "Sign it," Victoria said. "Please." "No." "Caleb, you want to know why I didn't say anything?" he said. She stopped. For 11 seconds. On the 51st floor. Caleb put both hands on the island, and he was shaking, and he let her see it. "Because you said 4 seconds. You said in 4 seconds you forgot it was a joke." He looked up. "Victoria, I never knew it was one." Silence. "What?" "I said it in a room full of 11 men who were talking over you like you were furniture. And every one of them laughed. And I laughed too." His voice was raw. "I laughed because that's what you do when you say something true by accident in front of people who'd kill you for meaning it." Victoria did not move. "I'd known you 11 hours, Caleb said. 11 hours. I'd stood in a hallway and listened to a room full of guys price you like a horse. And I'd watched a man put his hand on your throat while 200 people found somewhere else to look. And I'd been fired and sued. And I had $111. And I opened my mouth, and out came, 'I'd marry you myself.' And I have spent 5 months telling myself that was a joke." He laughed, and it came out wrecked. It was the truest thing I ever said. It just showed up 11 hours early, and I didn't have anywhere to put it. Victoria's hand had come up to her mouth. So no, Caleb said. I'm not signing it. Not because of the money. I never touched the money. You know, I never touched the money. It's still sitting in escrow like a rock in a river. I'm not signing it because I'm the guy who reads things twice, and I read that page, and it's wrong. It's not wrong, Victoria said. It's a release. It's wrong, Caleb said, because it says the marriage ends. And the marriage started 10 days ago. The kitchen was completely silent. 10 days ago, Victoria repeated. When you stood in a hallway and told me you were scared, Caleb said. That's what a wedding is. That's the whole thing. It's not the county office and Denise and the laminated card. It's a person walking up to another person and saying, I can't hold this by myself, and the other person saying, I've got you. You don't have to do the rest of it. Victoria Hale put both hands over her face. You said that to a man in the water, she said muffled. I said it to 406 of them, Caleb said. And I meant it every single time, and not one of them ever said it back. And then Victoria Hale, worth $4 billion, 11 buildings, the most feared woman in Boston, crossed the kitchen and put her forehead against Caleb Walker's collarbone and stood there, and her hands hovered in the air for 3 entire seconds, like she'd never been handed anything in her life. Then she put them on his back. I don't know how to do this, she said. I know. I'm going to be very bad at it. Probably. Caleb, I'm serious. I have no idea how people do this. Hey. He put a hand on the back of her head very carefully, the way she'd once done to a crying child on an ottoman. Stop doing the part where you hold yourself up. Somebody else has got that part for a minute. And Victoria Hale, who had not cried since 2009, cried in her own kitchen at 11 o'clock at night. And it was not graceful, and it was not brief, and it was the single, least clean thing that had ever happened in that apartment. From the hallway in shark pajamas with a flashlight. Are you guys crying? Yes, Caleb said. Lily considered this from the doorway with tremendous gravity. Is it the good kind or the bad kind? Victoria lifted her head, and her face was wrecked, and she laughed one honest, broken second and a half of it, and said, I don't know. Nobody's ever told me there were 2 kinds. There's 4 kinds, Lily said, walking in. There's mad crying and hurt crying, and the kind where the dog dies in the book, and then there's the one where something's so good it hurts. She stopped in front of them and looked up unblinking. Which one? Nobody answered. Oh, said Lily Walker. That one. And she wrapped both arms around the 2 of them at once, as far as they'd go, which was not very far, and held on. The paper stayed on the island for 2 more days. Then Victoria put it in a drawer, and then one Sunday in June, Caleb found her looking at something at the kitchen island, and it wasn't the release. It was the marriage certificate. The county one. Denise's. Still thinking about the crazy decision, he said. No. She didn't look up. I'm thinking about the 4 seconds. Caleb sat down next to her. You know what I keep coming back to? She said. If Adrian hadn't put his hand on my neck, you'd have stood in that hallway all night, and I'd have gone home, and I'd have married a spreadsheet in 9 months, and I'd have run that company for 30 years and been magnificent, and I would never once have known. She turned the page a quarter turn. The worst thing that ever happened to me in public is the only reason I'm not alone. That's a hell of a sentence. It's true. Yeah, Caleb said. That's why it's a hell of a sentence. She looked at him. It was the biggest mistake of my life, Caleb said. That joke. No, said Victoria Hale. It was the best mistake either of us ever made. God. They did it again in September, in a VFW hall, because Caleb insisted and Victoria, who had once negotiated a sovereign fund down 11 points in 4 hours, lost that argument in about 9 seconds. There were 91 people. There was a rented speaker. There was a sheet cake. Rick Vance wrote down what time it was. Mary and Chu came and said almost nothing, and at the door she stopped and looked at Victoria and said, "You don't look tired," and left before anyone could ask her what she meant. Ballard walked her in. Gerald cried during the vows and pretended it was allergies in September in a room with no plants. And Lily Walker, 7 3/4 in a dress she had chosen herself, with enormous seriousness, stood at the front, with her hands clasped, and waited for the part she'd negotiated for 4 weeks. "Before we begin," the officiant said, "the bride and groom have asked their daughter to say something." Lily stepped forward. She had a piece of paper. She did not use it. "My mom's name was Sarah Ellen Walker," she said in a voice that carried to the back of a VFW hall. "And she's not here, and nobody ever says her name. And I'm going to say it now, because Victoria told me I could say it as loud as I want in her house, and this is a house." The room went absolutely silent. "And my other mom is Victoria," Lily said. "And she's really bad at kids, she told me. That's how I knew she was going to be good at it." Then she sat down, and Caleb Walker had to look at the ceiling for a while. He'd believed for 12 years that a rescue was a thing you did with your hands. You went down the wire and you got the harness on a man, and you came up. And that was it. That was the whole trade. 406 times 9 of them lost the water temperature of every single one still sitting in his chest like a stone. He'd been wrong about the trade. Because a man in the water doesn't need you to be strong. He's already seen strong. He's seen a boat fold in half like a beer can. What he needs is one human being to come down out of a black sky and get in the water with him and refuse to leave, so that for 1 minute, for the first time in 40 minutes, he isn't the only person holding him up. Caleb had done that 406 times. It took a woman in a hallway at 10 o'clock at night to do it back. He crossed 15 feet of ballroom floor for a stranger, and it cost him his job, his license, his savings, and every plan he had. It was the cheapest thing he ever bought.